Welcome to the $55 million studio. I'm the Pro Wrestle Machine. We are into the year 2000 wrestling news and events. Use the chapter markers and enjoy, wrestling fan. Let's get into this issue. Through the use of the Pro Wrestle Machine. January 17, 2000 Wrestling Observer Newsletter. Gary Albright passes away. 1999 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards. By Dave Meltzer. Gary Albright, a former world-class amateur wrestling star and headliner on many big shows as a pro in Japan, died after collapsing in the ring at an independent show in Hazleton, Pennsylvania before about 100 fans on January 7. He was 36. The preliminary reports from the corner attributed the death of the 6'4", 340-pound powerhouse to a heart attack, technically speaking a combination of severe atherosclerosis, diabetes mellitus and acute pulmonary edema. Albright was a known diabetic for years. Funeral services were scheduled for January 14 in Pensacola, Florida, where he had resided for many years. He was a current regular with All Japan Pro Wrestling, where he was scheduled to return on February 12 after being given the current tour off. Since he had time off, he decided to take a vacation in Pennsylvania where many members of the Inoue family had moved, and work a few shows while there. The peak of his pro wrestling fame was in the mid-90s as the Monster Foreigner with the now-defunct Union of Wrestling Force International, UWFI, promotion and the beginnings of his stay with All Japan. He was wrestling along with several members of his family on the first of two weekend shows for his father-in-law Inoue of Wild Samoans fame, and his promotion called World Extreme Wrestling. On the fifth match of the card at the local American Legion building, during a match against Lucifer Grimm, real name Bill Owens of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, he collapsed after receiving an ace crusher, a move somewhat similar to a stone-cold stunner or a diamond cutter. He apparently suffered a heart attack at that point. Owens, who is said to have idolized Albright, told the Wilkes-Barre Times leader that he sensed that Albright lost power. Since he sensed something was wrong, and knew he was supposed to lose the match, Owens rolled to his back, and Albright instinctively put his arm on top of Owens. Owens told the ref to count to end the match, and then he started yelling for help. Albright was reportedly still breathing at this point. He was trying to get up, Owens told the local newspaper. I grabbed him by the head and said, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" He was going through the motions. I rolled onto my back, and he put his arm on me and I told the ref to count the pin. Jack Hill, who wrestled on the show as the Mad Russian, who was the show's EMT, performed CPR on Albright until paramedics arrived. Inoue said that Albright had died in his brother-in-law's, Sam Inouye's, arms. One paramedic told the newspaper that Albright was dead when they tried to revive him. Live witnesses said when a monitor was put on Albright's heart, it flatlined. He was officially pronounced dead at the Hazleton General Hospital. You can imagine the horror that my family and myself were facing, watching Gary passing away right in front of our eyes, Inoue continued. That was one of the hardest things I ever experienced. The hardest thing was making the phone call from the arena to my daughter to tell her what was happening to her husband. Inoue, whose daughter Monica was married to Albright, immediately canceled the rest of the show, as well as his show scheduled the next night in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Monica Inoue Albright was at the couple's home in Pensacola, Florida, and was going to fly into Pennsylvania in a few days. He was survived by 3 children named Sam, Angel, and Ali. I had personally known Gary for many years as we all lived in Pensacola, Florida, wrote Inoue on the ISPW website. Gary and my oldest son Sam were very good friends who called each other brother. You can imagine how delighted I was when Gary asked for the hand of my daughter Monica. Throughout their courtship, he made my baby very happy, and soon after, I was proud to walk my daughter up the aisle as she became Mrs. Gary Albright in a very romantic Samoan-style wedding on the island of Maui. Gary Albright. Career title history. Source: Wrestling Title Histories 3rd edition, Wrestling Observer Newsletter Archives. UWFI World Heavyweight, Def. Nobuhiko Takada May 8, 1992 to become first champion. Lost to Nobuhiko Takada September 21, 1992 Osaka. PWF World and International Tag Titles, with Stan Hansen defeated Akira Taue and Toshiaki Kauda January 24, 1996 Matsumoto. Lost to Akira Taue and Toshiaki Kauda February 20, 1996 Morioka. With Steve Williams defeated Kenta Kobashi and Johnny Ace July 25, 1997 Tokyo. Lost to Kenta Kobashi and Johnny Ace October 4, 1997 Nagoya. Stampede International Tag Titles, with Moccasin, Mike Shaw, Def. Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith December 30, 1998 Calgary. Lost to Chris Benoit and Biff Wellington April 8, 1989 Calgary. Wrestling Observer Awards. 1988, Rookie of the Year. Amateur Wrestling Awards, all as a heavyweight. 1981, Montana High School State Champion. 1982, U.S. Freestyle Nationals. First place, U.S. Greco-Roman Nationals. Fifth place, NCAA Tournament. Seventh place, AAU Freestyle Nationals. Third place, 1983 World Espoir, age 20 and under, Freestyle Championships. Second place, World Espoir Greco-Roman Championships. Third place, 1984 Big 8 Champion, NCAA Tournament. Second place, U.S. Greco-Roman Nationals. First place, U.S. Freestyle Nationals. Third place, 1986 NCAA Tournament. Third place. Sam Anoia arrived in the building at 9:35 p.m. because he had worked a show earlier that night in Reading, Pennsylvania, and saw his brother-in-law already in the ring. He said he could notice that something wasn't right because he didn't seem to have the strength to take his opponent over in a power slam, and he was coughing in the ring. I ran to the ring and my brother was having trouble, Sam Anoia wrote in the ISPW website. He had a tight fist in one arm and his eyes just couldn't seem to focus. Then my brother looked at me and his eyes cleared for a moment, and as he looked at me he let out a sigh, as if one of relief, I think, to see a face he knew, to feel comfort around him. Then Gary let out his last breath in my arms. All Japan held a 10-bell salute to Albright with Steve Williams in the ring holding a photo of him at its January 9th show in Fukuoka, and his death was covered on the NTV network newscast that evening. On the wrestling TV show later that evening they interviewed Williams, Mitsuharu Misawa along with Yoshihiro Takayama and Masahito Kakihara, the latter two of whom knew Albright dating back to the UWFI days. Takayama talked about how much Albright helped him in the ring, and Kakihara said he was a good friend and that Albright had in the past invited him to stay at his home for a week. Albright, a powerhouse cowboy originally from Billings, Montana, was one of the country's top amateur heavyweight wrestlers of the early and mid-1980s before embarking on a pro career, starting out with Stampede Wrestling before being hooked up and making his big reputation in Japan with the Works Shoot Fight organization. Albright wrestled a few matches for WCW before getting the UWFI job, and a few matches for ECW a few years ago, but not being a particularly good worker, or being colorful, charismatic, or having the right look for the more cosmetic-oriented American wrestling, didn't make an impact in his home country. His biggest American exposure was when Philadelphia boxing promoter Joe Hand attempted to make UWFI a viable third party on pay-per-view in 1993 and 94 with a promotional campaign with the tagline "Shoot Fighting, It's Real." Albright was the focus of the campaign, which tried to portray shoot fighters as being tougher than either pro boxers or pro wrestlers. Albright appeared on the first pay-per-view, which aired October 5, 1993 in the United States, taped the previous night in Osaka, teaming with Dan Severn in the semifinal to the Nobuhiko Takada vs. Billy Scott main event to lose to Soviets Vladimir Berkovich and Salman Hashimakov on a show that did shockingly well, 0.48 buy rate, on pay-per-view, actually slightly beating out the WCW pay-per-view which took place a few weeks earlier. For a foreign company with no television to draw a number like that and beat out WCW was nothing short of astounding. The UFC in particular at this point in time saw potential great numbers in matching Albright with its biggest star, Royce Gracie, but nothing ever materialized. However, the group failed to maintain momentum gained from the first show, which was largely well received. By the time a second pay-per-view aired, all the momentum was lost and the show only did in 0.1 buy rate as Albright, portrayed as the biggest threat to UWFI World Champion Nobuhiko Takada, destroyed Billy Scott in 2011. UWFI's third and final pay-per-view, which aired on November 11, 1994, was built around Takada and Albright's feud, showing tapes of their three previous singles matches, two of which Takada won and one of which Albright won. The show did only in 0.12 buy rate and the game was over, with Albright being phased down after the Takada feud ran its course and being asked to job for Masahito Kakihara and Kiyoshi Tamura, the latter under very strange circumstances, plus the company collapsing financially. Albright bailed out and joined All Japan Pro Wrestling. At the time, it was considered a major move for All Japan to bring in a top star from a shoot group because they just didn't do business that way, let alone push him in a main event capacity. Because of Albright's reputation from UWFI as being legitimately tough, he was a big draw immediately and pushed as one of the top foreigners. But as time went on, the novelty of what Albright's reputation was fading. Not being a great worker in a work rate promotion, his standing started dropping and he had largely been relegated to mid-level programs. Born May 18, 1963, Albright was a state champion heavyweight in Montana, compiling a 55-2 high school record in wrestling. This earned him a scholarship to the University of Nebraska. A huge natural powerhouse, Albright did not have what would be called an impressive physique by the standards of a pro wrestler, but he had a huge frame and particularly powerful hips and legs. He was not a hard trainer and hated the weights. There was an incident his freshman year where the Nebraska strength coach yelled at him about missing weight training sessions, and he went into the weight room, asked what the school record was for the leg press. Remember, this was University of Nebraska, known for its huge linemen fed on weights and whatever else they were fed on. He piled the weights on the machine, pressed it, asked the coach if he was strong enough. He then walked away and apparently never went back in the weight room over 5 years of college. He compiled a 112-19-4 record with 70 pins in 4 years of heavyweight collegiate competition, being a 3-time All-American and 2-time Big 8 champion. He placed 7th in the NCAA tournament as a freshman in 1982, losing in the tournament to future tag team partner and good friend Williams. 2-time Olympic gold medalist Bruce Baumgartner and Williams placed 1 and 2 that year. That same year, at about the time of his 19th birthday, he won the U.S. Freestyle Nationals and placed 5th in the U.S. Greco-Roman Nationals, which is very impressive since at that age he clearly did not have a ton of national caliber Greco-Roman experience, as well as taking 3rd in the AU Freestyle Nationals. He redshirted collegiate wrestling in 1983 but competed internationally, taking 2nd in the World Espoir, age 20 and under, championships in freestyle and 3rd in Greco-Roman. He came back to collegiate competition to place 2nd in the NCAAs in 1984 to the late 420-pound Tab Thacker, won the U.S. Greco-Roman Nationals and placed 3rd in the U.S. Freestyle Nationals behind Baumgartner and Thacker. As a senior in 1986, he beat Tom Erickson to garner 3rd place in the NCAAs. After college, he didn't continue his amateur career and with his size, was directed toward pro wrestling after meeting up with former wrestler and manager Beautiful Bruce Swayze. He trained with Swayze but was going nowhere. In 1987, his best friend from college, Jack Scow, was playing with the Cincinnati Bengals and a connection was made with strength coach Kim Wood, who was also instrumental in getting Brian Pillman started in pro wrestling. Wood arranged, through Pillman and Bruce Hart, since Stu Hart loved real shooters in his territory, for him to start with Stampede Wrestling in December 1987 with his first pro match against Pillman. In a territory filled with mainly junior heavyweights doing acrobatic style, Albright actually tried doing the flying moves everyone else was doing, even including a Keiji Muto-style handspring elbow, to fit in, but obviously those weren't the right moves for his size. Albright at various times went both by his real name and under the name Bokan Singh, sometimes at the same time, billed as the bigger younger half-brother of area top heel Makan Singh, Mike Shaw aka Bastion Booger. Albright was voted the Wrestling Observer's Rookie of the Year in 1988, and he and Singh captured the Stampede International Tag Team titles from Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith and held them for a little over 3 months before dropping them to Chris Benoit and Biff Wellington. After Stampede, his career sputtered for a while. He went to New Japan in June of 1990, another company due to its hierarchy of legitimate athletes that liked people with real credentials, but he didn't catch on and never went back, and also had a stint in Puerto Rico. After Stampede, Albright moved with his mother to Pensacola, Florida and did some television work with WCW, but his career was going nowhere. The UWFI, an offshoot of the exceedingly popular UWF promotion in Japan that folded at the end of 1990 after a power struggle and a money scandal, opened up in 1991. The company was built around Takada, who was one of the top stars of the old UWF and was the president and big draw with this new group. While Wood was in Japan, he met with the UWFI official and suggested Albright because of his amateur background in UWFI liked the idea because Albright had done some pro wrestling, but was not a major pro wrestling name since they wanted new stars since it was a supposed shoot group. Albright fit in perfectly as a monster with the group, since most of the native stars ranged from 5'7" to 5'11" and were all under 220 pounds, so Albright, at 6'4", could fit the traditional foreign monster role and visually give the impact of being much larger than he really was. Plus he had a background and threw strong suplexes. With his size advantage and legit wrestling skills, he was pushed as Takada's top opponent in 1992 and 93, destroying everyone in the company in what amounted to short squash matches, usually finishing with what was pushed as his knockout move, the Dragon Suplex, in 2 or 3 minutes. Albright used the move to beat Kazuo Yamazaki, the group's number 2 native star whose role was to put people over before they'd get shots at Takada, and Tamura, before he was a big name, along with American amateur stars like Severn and 2-time Olympian Dennis Kozlowski. This led to the showdown match on May 8, 1992 before 14,000 fans at Yokohama Arena, billed as to crown the first UWFI champion. As the angle went, Albright won the match after 3 German suplexes via knockout, and Takada had to be hospitalized for 2 days after the match, and became the company's first world heavyweight champion. This is the match that basically made Albright's career in Japan. Shortly after this match, UWFI hired Thez, who immediately took a liking to Albright because of his legitimacy, and created the angle of having a real world heavyweight champion that would wear the same belt Thez wore in the 1950s when he was NWA champion the first time in Japan, and when he was the closest thing in the modern era to a worldwide recognized champion. Thez would present the belt to the winner of the Takada-Albright rematch on September 21, 1992 in Osaka, which Takada won with an armbar. During this period, Albright regularly trained with the likes of Thez, Danny Hodge, and Billy Robinson, who worked as coaches for UWFI. When Vader was brought in on a big money deal in late 1993, Albright fell to the number 2 foreigner position. After Vader beat Takada for the title, Albright was given one last win over Takada on November 30, 1994 at Budokan Hall before a sellout 16,500 fans to set up the long-awaited Battle of the Monster Foreigners on January 16, 1995, which Vader won before another sellout at Budokan with a choke in 11:25. Albright also worked the semi-final to the first Takada-Vader match on December 5, 1993 at Tokyo Jingu Stadium before a sellout 46,168 fans, teaming with Severn to lose once again to Berkovich and Hashimikov. He also wrestled on the 13 promotion show on April 2, 1995 before 60,000 fans at the Tokyo Dome for UWFI, as well as both All Japan Tokyo Dome shows the past 2 years. Albright and UWFI had a falling out at this point, when they started phasing him down, asking him to job to smaller junior heavyweights like Masahito Kakihara and Tamura, and the company was undergoing financial problems. After he had done one job for Tamura, he is brought back for a rematch on August 18, 1995 at Tokyo Bay NK Hall that he figured he would win. There were problems backstage when he refused to do a second job for the young Japanese star half his size, and the match actually went into the ring with no finish. Albright, much larger and stronger, took Tamura down and Tamura couldn't get up. The referee frantically tried to get Albright to let Tamura up as they were in the ropes, and he refused. It was a very strange scene, but after a few minutes of actual shooting, Albright clearly had blown up and could barely move, and was a sitting duck for Tamura's open-handed blows to the face that Albright couldn't block. Tamura sunk in a deep choke and Albright tapped, and Albright never appeared with the group again. Giant Baba, going against his normal ways of doing business, recognized Albright as a new headliner he could put against his native stars, and brought in Albright for a dream match on October 25, 1995 with Toshiaki Kawada at Budokan Hall before the usual but far more heated than even normal standards All Japan sellout house of 16,300, with Kawada going over. Some who had worked with and even coached him felt that Albright, used to wrestling one match per month, would be unable to survive the daily grind of All Japan, but he survived the tough style as a regular for more than 4 years. The next tour was the tag team tournament, and Albright teamed with Stan Hansen, who he remained good friends with, placing third. The two ended up winning the double tag team titles from Akira Taue and Kawada for 1 month in 1996 before losing it back. He also got his second singles Budokan main event on March 2, 1996, losing to Mitsuharu Misawa in a Triple Crown match. Albright remained somewhat protected, but not heavily pushed the remainder of his All Japan career and put in a series of tag teams that failed. He was made the regular partner of Sabu in late 1996, but that didn't work out because Sabu failed to get over as a serious star with the company and ended up quitting. He then formed a UWFI team with Yoshihiro Takayama to feud with tag champs Kawada and Taue in early 1997, but that didn't last, and the top group was formed with Albright, Williams, and the Lacrosse, Jim Roche. He and Williams won the tag titles from Kenta Kobashi and Johnny Ace on July 25, 1997 at Budokan Hall in one of the worst tag title matches in company history, and scored his only pinfall ever on Misawa in a defense on August 26, 1997 in Sapporo, beating Misawa and Jun Akiyama, which set up a Misawa vs. Albright singles match on September 29, 1997 in Matsumoto, which Misawa won. They dropped the titles to Kobashi and Ace on October 4, 1997 in Nagoya, and then placed third in the 1997 tag team tournament. He and Williams lost to Kawada and Taue in a tag title match on February 28, 1998 at Budokan Hall before Williams left All Japan for WWF. He then teamed with Takayama in a tag title match on July 15, 1998 match in Osaka, losing to Kawada and Taue. But his stock fell badly that year, as he was given Giant Kimala 2 in the tag team tournament and they compiled a 1-6 record. and wasn't given any major matches in 1999, and compiled another 1-6 record with Wolf Hockfield Roche as his partner. His final Japanese match was on December 3 at Budokan Hall, pinning Masao Inoue. Albright was planning on moving his family back to Montana, opening up a pro wrestling school and a small independent promotion, and teach his son Sam amateur wrestling. 1999 Wrestling Observer Awards. The following are the results of the 20th Annual Wrestling Observer Newsletter Readership Awards, along with a listing of the previous winners in the various categories. Readers are encouraged to send in their comments on the results. Category Awards. Winners determined by points voted on a 5-3-2 basis. Wrestler of the Year. Mitsuharu Misawa with 171 first-place votes, totaling 1,379 points. Steve Austin with 176 first-place votes, and 1,233 points. Vader with 59 first-place votes, earning 789 points. The Rock with 74 first-place votes, totaling 747 points. Keiji Muto with 73 first-place votes, and 640 points. Kenta Kobashi with 2 first-place votes, and 218 points. Mick Foley with 22 first-place votes, scoring 208 points. Chris Benoit with 8 first-place votes, totaling 187 points. Rob Van Dam with 5 first-place votes, and 157 points. Hunter Hearst Helmsley with 1 first-place vote, and 97 points. Honorable mention Koji Kanemoto, with 66 points. Previous winners. 1980 Harley Race. 1981 to 1986, Ric Flair dominated for 6 straight years. 1987, Riki Choshu. 1988, Akira Maeda. 1989 and 1990, Ric Flair once again, making it 8 total wins at this point. 1991, Jumbo Tsuruta. 1992, Ric Flair, adding his 9th victory. 1993, Vader. 1994, Toshiaki Kawada. 1995, Mitsuharu Misawa. 1996, Kenta Kobashi. 1997, Mitsuharu Misawa, returning to claim his 2nd win. 1998, Steve Austin. Most Outstanding Wrestler. Mitsuharu Misawa with 200 first-place votes, totaling 1,348 points. Chris Benoit with 118 first-place votes, and 921 points. Kenta Kobashi with 85 first-place votes, earning 792 points. Koji Kanemoto with 70 first-place votes, and 689 points. Shinjiro Otani with 45 first-place votes, totaling 425 points. Billy Kidman with 17 first-place votes, and 144 points. Jerry Lynn with 11 first-place votes, scoring 138 points. Rob Van Dam with 4 first-place votes, and 124 points. Jun Akiyama with 121 points. Jeff Hardy with 1 first-place vote, and 105 points. Jushin Liger also with 2 first-place votes, and 105 points. Honorable mentions. Juventud Guerrera with 104 points. Super Crazy with 103 points. Masato Tanaka with 60 points. Previous winners. 1986 and 1987, Ric Flair kicked things off with back-to-back wins. 1988, Tatsumi Fujinami. 1989, Ric Flair came back to reclaim the title again. 1990 to 1992, Jushin Liger dominated for 3 consecutive years, proving why he's one of the greatest junior heavyweights of all time. 1993 and 1994, Kenta Kobashi made his mark with 2 straight wins. 1995, Manami Toyota, representing the Joshi scene with a historic victory. 1996, Rey Mysterio Jr., redefining what it means to be most outstanding with his high-flying style. 1997, Mitsuharu Misawa. 1998, Koji Kanemoto. Best box office draw. Steve Austin with 313 first-place votes, dominating with 2,431 points. The Rock with 20 first-place votes, earning 1,207 points. Keiji Muto with 4 first-place votes, and 333 points. Bill Goldberg with 1 first-place vote, and 317 points. Vader with 11 first-place votes, totaling 224 points. Mitsuharu Misawa with 13 first-place votes, and 205 points. Mick Foley with 132 points. Vince McMahon with 103 points. Kenta Kobashi with 48 points. Hulk Hogan with 26 points. Previous winners: 1997, Hulk Hogan. 1998, Steve Austin. Best Babyface, previous winners: 1980, Dusty Rhodes. 1981, Tommy Rich. 1982 to 1991, Hulk Hogan, winning for an incredible 10 consecutive years. 1992, Sting. 1993 and 1994, Atsushi Onita, taking back-to-back honors. 1995, Pero Aguayo. 1996, Shawn Michaels. Best Heel, previous winners: 1980, Larry Zbyszko. 1981, Don Muraco. 1982, Buzz Sawyer. 1983, Michael Hayes. 1984 and 1985, Roddy Piper, taking it 2 years in a row. 1986, Michael Hayes returning for another win. 1987 and 1988, Ted DiBiase, owning the late 80s with his back-to-back wins. 1989, Terry Funk. 1990, Ric Flair. 1991, The Undertaker. 1992, Rick Rude. 1993, Vader. 1994, Love Machine. 1995, Masahiro Chono. 1996, Steve Austin. Feud of the Year: Steve Austin vs. Vince McMahon with 131st place votes, totaling 738 points. Rob Van Dam vs. Jerry Lynn with 74 first place votes and 675 points. Steve Austin vs. The Rock with 79 first place votes, earning 511 points. The Rock vs. Mankind with 36 first place votes, totaling 429 points. Burning vs. Untouchables with 38 first place votes and 361 points. Hunter Hearst Helmsley vs. Vince McMahon with 34 first place votes, scoring 304 points. Edge and Christian vs. Matt and Jeff Hardy with 22 first place votes, totaling 303 points. Kenta Kobashi vs. Vader with 24 first place votes, earning 302 points. Naoya Ogawa vs. Shinya Hashimoto with 13 first place votes and 249 points. Gia vs. SSU with 28 first place votes, scoring 229 points. Honorable mentions: Misawa vs. Vader, 228 points. Ligers Jr. vs. Atani, Kanemoto, and Takawa, 143 points. Super Crazy vs. Tajiri, 102 points. Steve Austin vs. The Undertaker, 68 points. Crazy Max vs. Magnum Tokyo, 60 points. Previous winners: 1980, Bruno Sammartino vs. Larry Zbyszko. 1981, Andre the Giant vs. Killer Khan. 1982, Ted DiBiase vs. Junkyard Dog. 1983, Freebirds vs. Von Erichs. 1984, Freebirds vs. Von Erichs. 1985, Ted DiBiase vs. Jim Duggan. 1986, Hulk Hogan vs. Paul Orndorff. 1987, Jerry Lawler vs. Austin Idol and Tommy Rich. 1988, Midnight Express vs. Fantastics. 1989, Ric Flair vs. Terry Funk. 1990, Jumbo Tsuruta vs. Mitsuharu Misawa. 1991, Tsuruta and Company vs. Misawa and Company. 1992, Moondogs vs. Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett. 1993, Bret Hart vs. Jerry Lawler. 1994, Gringos Locos vs. Mexican AAA. 1995, Dean Malenko vs. Eddie Guerrero. 1996, WCW vs. NWO. 1997, Steve Austin vs. Hart Foundation. 1988, Steve Austin vs. Vince McMahon. Tag Team of the Year: Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama with 314 first place votes, dominating with 1,872 points. Matt and Jeff Hardy with 134 first place votes, earning 1,075 points. Shinjiro Otani and Tatsuhito Takaiwa with 10 first place votes, totaling 586 points. Mitsuharu Misawa and Yoshinari Ogawa with 5 first place votes and 505 points. Edge and Christian with 12 first place votes, scoring 333 points. Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko with 6 first place votes, earning 118 points. Road Dogg and Billy Gunn with 9 first place votes, totaling 117 points. Atsuko Mita and Amima Shimoda with 13 first place votes and 85 points. Tao Omori and Yoshihiro Takayama with 6 first place votes, scoring 83 points. Bubba Ray and D. Von Dudley with 6 first place votes, totaling 77 points. Honorable mentions: Jarrett and Owen Hart with 70 points. Justin Credible and Lance Storm with 63 points. Previous winners: 1980 Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts. 1981 Terry Gordy and Jimmy Snuka. 1982 Stan Hansen and Ole Anderson. 1983 Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. 1984 The Road Warriors. 1985 Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith. 1986 Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey. 1987 and 1988 Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, winning back-to-back. 1989 Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. 1990 Rick and Scott Steiner. 1991 Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada. 1992 Terry Gordy and Steve Williams. 1993 Brian Pillman and Steve Austin. 1994 Love Machine and Eddie Guerrero. 1995 Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi. 1996 and 1997 Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama, taking the award 2 years in a row. 1998 Shinjiro Otani and Tatsuhito Takaiwa. Most improved: Vader with 83 first place votes, leading with 420 points. Kane with 32 first place votes, earning 322 points. Test with 34 first place votes, totaling 289 points. Jeff Hardy with 19 first place votes, scoring 259 points. Bob Holly with 35 first place votes, earning 254 points. Hunter Hearst Helmsley with 33 first place votes, totaling 237 points. Shima with 26 first place votes, and 195 points. Magnum Tokyo with 1 first place vote, scoring 191 points. Jerry Lynn with 28 first place votes, totaling 165 points. Danny During with 16 first place votes, earning 157 points. Honorable mentions: Bill Goldberg with 144 points. Blitzkrieg with 137 points. Lance Storm with 126 points. Minoru Tanaka with 119 points. Super Crazy with 114 points. Edge with 105 points. Manabu Nakanishi with 95 points. Matt Hardy with 94 points. Don Fry with 83 points. Takao Mori with 83 points. Little Guido with 66 points. Most improved, previous winners: 1980 Larry Zbyszko. 1981 Adrian Adonis. 1982 Jim Duggan. 1983 Kurt Hennig. 1984 The Cobra George Takano. 1985 Steve Williams. 1986 Rick Steiner. 1987 Big Bubba Rogers. Big Boss Man. 1988 Sting. 1989 Lex Luger. 1990 Kenta Kobashi. 1991 Dustin Rhodes. 1992 El Samurai. 1993 Tracy Smothers. 1994 Diesel, Kevin Nash. 1995 Johnny B. Bad, Mark Marrow. 1996 Diamond Dallas Page. 1997 Tatsuhito Takaiwa. 1998 The Rock. Most charismatic: The Rock with 355 first place votes, totaling 2,106 points. Steve Austin with 74 first place votes, earning 1,053 points. Chris Jericho with 10 first place votes, scoring 346 points. Bill Goldberg with 2 first place votes, earning 345 points. Mick Foley with 7 first place votes, totaling 161 points. Magnum Tokyo with 14 first place votes, earning 115 points. Masahiro Chono with 2 first place votes, scoring 73 points. Rob Van Dam with 1 first place vote, earning 71 points. Ric Flair with 4 first place votes, scoring 70 points. Vince McMahon with 6 first place votes, earning 63 points. Previous winners: 1980 Ric Flair. 1981 Michael Hayes. 1982 Dusty Rhodes and Ric Flair. Tied 1983 and 1984 Ric Flair. 1985 to 1991 Hulk Hogan dominating for 7 years. 1992 Sting. 1993 Ric Flair. 1994 Atsushi Onita. 1995 and 1996 Shawn Michaels. 1997 and 1998, Steve Austin. Best Technical Wrestler. Shinjiro Otani with 105 first place votes, totaling 799 points. Chris Benoit with 118 first place votes, earning 720 points. Kiyoshi Tamura with 86 first place votes, scoring 625 points. Koji Kanemoto with 57 first place votes, earning 496 points. Minoru Tanaka with 25 first place votes, totaling 409 points. Dean Malenko with 30 first place votes, earning 404 points. Yoshihiro Tajiri with 11 first place votes, scoring 166 points. Fulk Hana and Bret Hart tied with 145 points each. Kendo Kashin with 2 first place votes, earning 137 points. Honorable mentions. Kurt Angle with 93 points. Super Crazy with 92 points. Das Cars with 90 points. Mitsuharu Misawa with 89 points. Jerry Lynn with 79 points. Jushin Liger with 68 points. Previous winners. 1980 Bob Backlund. 1981 Ted DiBiase. 1982 and 1983 Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama. 1984 Dynamite Kid and Masa Saito tied. 1985 and 1986 Tatsumi Fujinami. 1987 Nobuhiko Takada. 1988 Tatsumi Fujinami. 1989 to 1992 Jushin Liger. 1993 Hiroshi Hazi. 1994 and 1995 Chris Benoit. 1996 and 1997 Dean Malenko. 1998 Kiyoshi Tamura. Bruiser Brody Memorial Award Best Brawler. Mick Foley with 190 first place votes, totaling 1,318 points. Steve Austin with 86 first place votes, scoring 1,064 points. Chris Benoit with 70 first place votes, earning 708 points. Masato Tanaka with 69 first place votes, earning 496 points. Vader with 39 first place votes, scoring 294 points. Linus Asuka with 21 first place votes, totaling 157 points. Mayumi Ozaki with 11 first place votes, scoring 132 points. Asia Kong with 2 first place votes, earning 106 points. Balls Mahoney with 10 first place votes, scoring 84 points. David Finlay with 11 first place votes, earning 76 points. Previous winners. 1980 to 1984, Bruiser Brody. 1985, Stan Hansen. 1986, Terry Gordy. 1987 and 1988, Bruiser Brody. 1989, Terry Funk. 1990, Stan Hansen. 1991 to 1995, Cactus Jack. 1996 and 1997, Mankind. 1998, Mick Foley. Best Flying Wrestler. Juventud Guerrero with 109 first place votes, totaling 924 points. Jeff Hardy with 99 first place votes, scoring 816 points. Dragon Kid with 44 first place votes, earning 665 points. Super Crazy with 65 first place votes, totaling 632 points. Rey Mysterio Jr. with 47 first place votes, earning 408 points. Blitzkrieg with 31 first place votes, scoring 382 points. Great Sasuke and Chima tied with 252 points each. Billy Kidman with 3 first place votes, earning 224 points. Rob Van Dam with 25 first place votes, totaling 223 points. Honorable mentions. Hayabusa with 155 points. Previous winners. 1981, Jimmy Snuka. 1982 and 1983, Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama. 1984, Dynamite Kid. 1985 and 1986, Tiger Mask, Mitsuharu Misawa. 1987 and 1988, Owen Hart. 1989 to 1993, Jushin Liger. 1994, Great Sasuke. 1995 to 1997, Rey Mysterio Jr. 1998, Juventud Guerrera. Most overrated. Kevin Nash with 127 first place votes, totaling 1,099 points. Hulk Hogan with 94 first place votes, scoring 769 points. Sid Vicious with 22 first place votes, earning 423 points. Big Show with 38 first place votes, scoring 388 points. China with 10 first place votes, earning 146 points. Lex Luger with 5 first place votes, scoring 134 points. Atsushi Onita with 22 first place votes, earning 121 points. Rob Van Dam with 19 first place votes, scoring 110 points. Jeff Jarrett with 26 first place votes, earning 98 points. Hunter Hearst Helmsley with 14 first place votes, totaling 92 points. Honorable mentions: Diamond Dallas Page with 80 points. Buff Bagwell with 75 points. Sting with 66 points. Steve Austin with 64 points. The Rock with 62 points. Scott Hall with 60 points. Previous winners: 1980, Mr. Wrestling 2. 1981 and 1982, Pedro Morales. 1983, Bob Backlund. 1984, John Studd. 1985 and 1986, Hulk Hogan. 1987 and 1988, Dusty Rhodes. 1989 to 1991, Ultimate Warrior. 1992, Eric Watts. 1993, Sid Vicious. 1994 to 1998, Hulk Hogan. Most underrated: Chris Jericho with 107 first place votes, totaling 640 points. Juventud Guerrero with 56 first place votes, earning 639 points. Chris Benoit with 54 first place votes, scoring 379 points. Psicosis with 29 first place votes, earning 214 points. Eddie Guerrero with 7 first place votes, scoring 197 points. Masahito Kakihara with 22 first place votes, earning 183 points. Jeff Hardy with 25 first place votes, scoring 182 points. Takamichi Noku with 8 first place votes, earning 175 points. Billy Kidman with 10 first place votes, earning 165 points. Brian Christopher and Edge tied with 93 points each. Honorable mentions: Jerry Lynn with 92 points. Kaz Hayashi with 89 points. Dos Cars with 88 points. D'Lo Brown with 84 points. La Parka with 82 points. Yuji Nagata with 74 points. Blitzkrieg with 67 points. Minoru Tanaka with 60 points. Previous winners: 1980 Iron Sheik. 1981 Buzz Sawyer. 1982 Adrian Adonis. 1983 Dynamite Kid. 1984 Brian Blair. 1985 and 1986 Bobby Eaton. 1987 Brad Armstrong. 1988 Tiger Mask meets Suharu Misawa. 1989 Dan Crawford. 1990 Bobby Eaton. 1991 and 1992 Terry Taylor. 1993 Bobby Eaton. 1994 Brian Pillman. 1995 Skip Chris Condito. 1996 Leif Cassidy, Al Snow. 1997 Flash Funk, Too Cold Scorpio. 1998 Chris Benoit. Promotion of the Year: World Wrestling Federation with 194 first place votes, totaling 1,645 points. New Japan Pro Wrestling with 122 first place votes, earning 1,383 points. All Japan Pro Wrestling with 77 first place votes, scoring 1,200 points. Extreme Championship Wrestling with 24 first place votes, earning 603 points. Gia with 52 first place votes, totaling 431 points. Toryuman with 3 first place votes, earning 215 points. World Championship Wrestling with 11 first place votes, scoring 181 points. Battlerts with 1 first place vote, earning 167 points. EMLO with 2 first place votes, scoring 88 points. Dream Stage Entertainment with 5 first place votes, totaling 74 points. Previous winners: 1983 Jim Crockett Promotions. 1984 New Japan Pro Wrestling. 1985 All Japan Pro Wrestling. 1986 Mid-South Sports. 1987 and 1988 New Japan Pro Wrestling. 1989 Universal Wrestling Federation Japan. 1990 and 1991 All Japan Pro Wrestling. 1992 New Japan Pro Wrestling. 1993 All Japan Pro Wrestling. 1994 AAA. 1995 to 1998 New Japan Pro Wrestling. Best Weekly Television Show: WWF Raw is War with 274 first-place votes, totaling 1,611 points. New Japan World Pro Wrestling with 122 first-place votes, earning 1,134 points. All Japan Pro Wrestling 30 with 101 first-place votes, scoring 1,053 points. WWF SmackDown with 7 first-place votes, earning 531 points. ECW on TNN with 20 first-place votes, scoring 514 points. ECW Hardcore Wrestling with 22 first-place votes, totaling 298 points. WCW Monday Nitro with 6 first-place votes, earning 189 points. EMLL with 4 first-place votes, totaling 85 points. Power Pro Wrestling with 2 first-place votes, scoring 35 points. WWF Sunday Night Heat with 25 points. Previous winners: 1983 and 1984, New Japan World Pro Wrestling. 1985 and 1986, Mid-South Wrestling and Universal Wrestling Federation, Mid-South 1987, CWA 90-Minute Memphis Wrestling. 1988, New Japan World Pro Wrestling. 1989 to 1993, All Japan Pro Wrestling. 1994 to 1996, Extreme Championship Wrestling. 1997, New Japan World Pro Wrestling. 1998, WWF Raw is War. Match of the Year: Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Kenta Kobashi, June 11, Tokyo, 221 first-place votes, 1,285 points. Edge and Christian vs. the Hardy Boys, October 17, Cleveland, 114 first-place votes, 940 points. Bret Hart vs. Chris Benoit, October 4, Kansas City, 40 first-place votes, 488 points. Misawa and Ogawa vs. Kobashi and Akiyama, March 6, Tokyo, 38 first-place votes, 339 points. Steve Austin vs. The Rock, April 25, Hartford, 24 first-place votes, 242 points. Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Toshiaki Kawada, January 22, Osaka, 14 first-place votes, 230 points. Misawa and Ogawa vs. Kobashi and Akiyama, October 23, Nagoya, 15 first-place votes, 220 points. Atani and Takaiwa vs. Tanaka and Kanemoto, October 11, Tokyo, 2 first-place votes, 158 points. Kiyoshi Tamura vs. Yoshihisa Yamamoto, June 24, Tokyo, 14 first-place votes, 157 points. Juventud Guerrera vs. Blitzkrieg, April 11, Tacoma, 16 first-place votes, 152 points. Honorable mentions: Rob Van Dam vs. Jerry Lynn, March 21, Asbury Park, 139 points. Psicosis vs. Rey Mysterio Jr. vs. Juventud Guerrera vs. Blitzkrieg, April 19, Gainesville, Florida, 126 points. Rob Van Dam vs. Jerry Lynn, May 16, Poughkeepsie, 120 points. Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Vader, May 2, Tokyo, 109 points. Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Vader, October 30, Tokyo, 89 points. Great Sasuke vs. Magnum Tokyo, February 7, Yokohama, 73 points. Masato Tanaka vs. Mike Awesome, November 7, Buffalo, 69 points. Jushin Liger vs. Koji Kanemoto, March 17, Hiroshima, 61 points. The Rock vs. Mankind, January 24, Anaheim, 60 points. Previous winners: 1980, Bob Backlund vs. Ken Patera, New York. 1981, Pat Patterson vs. Sergeant Slaughter, April 21, New York. 1982, Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama vs. Dynamite Kid, August 5, Tokyo. 1983, Ric Flair vs. Harley Race, November 24, Greensboro. 1984, Freebirds vs. Von Erichs, July 4, Fort Worth. 1985, Tiger Mask, Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Kuniaki Kobayashi, June 12, Tokyo. 1986, Ric Flair vs. Barry Windham, February 14, Orlando. 1987, Ricky Steamboat vs. Randy Savage, March 29, Pontiac. 1988, Ric Flair vs. Sting, March 27, Greensboro. 1989, Ric Flair vs. Ricky Steamboat, April 2, New Orleans. 1990, Jushin Liger vs. Naoki Sano, January 31, Osaka. 1991, Rick and Scott Steiner vs. Hiroshi Hazi and Kensuke Sasaki, March 21, Tokyo. 1992, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness vs. Kenta Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, May 25, Miyagi. 1993, Manami Toyota and Tashio Yamada vs. Dynamite Kansai and Mayumi Ozaki, April 21, Osaka. 1994, Shawn Michaels vs. Razor Ramon Scott Hall, March 20, New York. 1995, Manami Toyota vs. Kyoko Inoue, May 7, Tokyo. 1996, Mitsuharu Misawa and Jun Akiyama vs. Steve Williams and Johnny Ace, June 7, Tokyo. 1997, Bret Hart vs. Steve Austin, March 23, Chicago. 1998, Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Kenta Kobashi, October 31, Tokyo. Rookie of the Year. Blitzkrieg with 98 first-place votes, totaling 792 points. Shane McMahon with 87 first-place votes, earning 585 points. Kurt Angle with 46 first-place votes, scoring 437 points. Test with 44 first-place votes, earning 366 points. Lash LaRue with 27 first-place votes, scoring 347 points. Jody Fleisch with 17 first-place votes, totaling 191 points. Fujita with 34 first-place votes, earning 180 points. David Flair with 2 first-place votes, scoring 68 points. Genki Horiguchi with 12 first-place votes, totaling 65 points. Masaru Sano with 3 first-place votes, earning 63 points. Previous winners: 1980, Barry Windham. 1981, Brad Armstrong and Brad Rheingans. Tied 1982, Steve Williams. 1983, Road Warriors. 1984, Tom Zenk and Keiichi Yamada, Jushin Liger. Tied 1985, Jack Victory. 1986, Bam Bam Bigelow. 1987, Brian Pillman. 1988, Gary Albright. 1989, Dustin Rhodes. 1990, Steve Austin. 1991, Johnny B. Bad, Mark Mero. 1992, Rey Mysterio Jr. 1993, Jun Akiyama. 1994, Mikey Whipwreck. 1995, Pero Aguayo Jr. 1996, The Giant, Big Show. 1997, Mr. Aguila, Papi Chulo. 1998, Bill Goldberg. Best Non-Wrestler: Vince McMahon with 169 first-place votes, totaling 1,490 points. Shane McMahon with 63 first-place votes, earning 938 points. Joel Gertner with 19 first-place votes, scoring 185 points. Torrie Wilson with 9 first-place votes, earning 180 points. Deborah with 2 first-place votes, totaling 178 points. Cyrus with 22 first-place votes, earning 143 points. Dawn Marie with 7 first-place votes, scoring 128 points. Shawn Michaels with 10 first-place votes, totaling 124 points. Stephanie McMahon with 11 first-place votes, scoring 87 points. Bill Alfonso with 5 first-place votes, earning 71 points. Honorable mention: Terry Runnels with 60 points. Manager of the Year previous winners: 1983 and 1984, Jimmy Hart. 1985 to 1990, Jim Cornette, winning 6 consecutive years. 1991, Sensational Sherry Martel. 1992 to 1995, Jim Cornette. 1996, Jim Cornette. Best Television Announcer: Jim Ross with 365 first-place votes, totaling 1,989 points. Mike Tenay with 23 first-place votes, earning 687 points. Joey Styles with 16 first-place votes, scoring 651 points. Scott Hudson with 47 first-place votes, earning 554 points. Jerry Lawler with 38 first-place votes, scoring 497 points. Don Callis with 13 first-place votes, earning 253 points. Jeff Blatnick with 2 first-place votes, totaling 106 points. Bobby Heenan with 44 points. Michael Cole with 28 points. Joel Gertner with 22 points. Previous winners: 1981 and 1982, Gordon Solie. 1983 to 1987, Lance Russell. 1988 to 1993, Jim Ross. 1994 to 1996, Joey Styles. 1997, Mike Tenay. 1998, Jim Ross. Worst Television Announcer: Tony Schiavone with 204 first-place votes, totaling 1,387 points. Bobby Heenan with 52 first-place votes, earning 635 points. Michael Cole with 33 first-place votes, scoring 565 points. Larry Zbyszko with 31 first-place votes, earning 435 points. Kevin Kelly with 19 first place votes, scoring 267 points. Joel Gertner with 31 first place votes, earning 243 points. Joey Styles with 10 first place votes, scoring 202 points. Dusty Rhodes with 28 first place votes, earning 174 points. Jerry Lawler with 12 first place votes, scoring 153 points. Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo tied with 92 points each. Honorable mention: Corey Macklin with 77 points. Jim Ross with 62 points. Previous winners: 1984 to 1987, David Crockett. 1988, Ed Whalen. 1989, Herb Abrams. 1990 to 1995, Gorilla Monsoon. 1996, Steve McMichael. 1997, Dusty Rhodes. 1998, Lee Marshall. Best Major Wrestling Card: ECW Anarchy Rules, September 19th, Chicago. 76 first place votes, 727 points. New Japan, October 11th, Tokyo Dome, 61 first place votes, 507 points. WWF No Mercy, October 17th, Cleveland, 75 first place votes, 485 points. WWF WrestleMania, March 28th, Philadelphia, 42 first place votes, 467 points. WCW Spring Stampede, April 11th, Tacoma, 59 first place votes, 446 points. WWF SummerSlam, August 22nd, Minneapolis, 42 first place votes, 381 points. All Japan, May 2nd, Tokyo Dome, 25 first place votes, 314 points. GIA, April 4th, Yokohama, 35 first place votes, 269 points. All Japan, June 11th, Tokyo Budokan, 26 first place votes, 235 points. GIA, September 15th, Yokohama, 14 first place votes, 215 points. Honorable mentions: All Japan Anniversary Show, October 30th, Tokyo, 205 points. ECW November to Remember, November 7th, Buffalo, 129 points. WWF St. Valentine's Day Massacre, 128 points. WWF Backlash, April 25th, Hartford, 102 points. ECW Heatwave, July 18th, Dayton, 91 points. Rings, June 24th, Tokyo, 88 points. New Japan, May 3rd, Fukuoka, 86 points. New Japan G1 Climax Tournament Finals, August 15th, 86 points. ECW Guilty as Charged, January 10th, Kissimmee, Florida, 78 points. WWF Royal Rumble, January 24th, Anaheim, 72 points. Urgent, April 24th, Yokohama, 70 points. ECW Living Dangerously, May 16th, Poughkeepsie, 66 points. New Japan, April 10th, Tokyo Dome, 61 points. Previous winners: 1989 WCW Great American Bash, July 23rd, Baltimore. 1990 WWF/New Japan/All Japan US and Japan Wrestling Summit, April 13th, Tokyo. 1991 WCW Wrestle War, February 24th, Phoenix. 1992 All Japan Women WrestleMarinePiad, April 25th, Yokohama. 1993 All Japan Women Dream Slam I, April 2nd, Yokohama. 1994 New Japan Super J Cup, April 16th, Tokyo. 1995 Weekly Pro Wrestling Multi-Promotional Show, April 2nd, Tokyo. 1996 War Super J Cup Second Stage, December 13th, 1995, Tokyo. 1997 WWF Calgary Stampede, July 16th, Calgary. 1998 ECW Heatwave, August 2nd, Dayton. Worst Major Wrestling Card: Heroes of Wrestling, October 10th, Bay St. Louis, 191 first place votes. WCW Bash at the Beach, July 11th, Fort Lauderdale, 58 first place votes. WWF Survivor Series, November 14th, Detroit, 49 first place votes. WWF Over the Edge, May 24th, Kansas City, 47 first place votes. WCW Fall Brawl, September 12th, Winston-Salem, 34 first place votes. WCW Road Wild, August 15th, Sturgis, 22 first place votes. WWF Unforgiven, September 26th, Charlotte, 21st place votes. WCW Great American Bash, June 13th, Baltimore, 15 first place votes. WWF King of the Ring, June 27th, Greensboro, 13 first place votes. WCW Halloween Havoc, October 24th, Las Vegas, 13 first place votes. Honorable mention: WCW Super Brawl February 21st, Oakland, 10 points. Previous winners. 1989 WWF WrestleMania, April 2nd, Atlantic City. 1990 WCW Clash 13, November 20th, Jacksonville. 1991 WCW Great American Bash, July 4th, Baltimore. 1992 WCW Halloween Havoc, October 25th, Philadelphia. 1993 WCW Fall Brawl, September 19th, Houston. 1994 UWF Blackjack Brawl, September 25th, Las Vegas. 1995 and 1996 WCW Uncensored, March 29, 1995, and March 24, 1996, Tupelo. 1997, WCW NWO Sold Out, January 25, Cedar Rapids. 1998 WCW Fall Brawl, September 13, Winston-Salem. Best Wrestling Maneuver. Dragon Kid Dragon Rana, 97 first place votes Jeff Hardy Swanton Bomb Senton Bomb, 84 votes Kenta Kobashi, Burning Hammer, Torture Rack Death Valley Driver, 48 votes Toshiaki Kawada Gonzo Bomb Unasawa, January 22, 38 votes Billy Kidman, Shooting Star Press, 27 votes Chris Benoit, Headbutt Off Cage, 26 votes Yoshihiro Tajiri Tarantula, 25 votes The Rock, People's Elbow, 21 votes Hayabusa, Phoenix Splash, 15 votes Doc Chan, Shooting Star Plancha, 13 votes. Honorable mentions. Juventud Guerrera, Top Rope Juvie Driver 12 points Blitzkrieg, Sky Twister 10 points Linus Asuka, Tomahawk Bomb, 10 points Rikishi Fatu, Sit Out Pile Driver, 9 points Previous winners. 1981 Jimmy Snuka, Superfly Splash. 1982 Super Destroyer, Scott Irwin Superplex. 1983 Jimmy Snuka, Superfly Splash. 1984 Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, Power Clean Slash Dropkick Combo. 1985 Tiger Mask, Mitsuharu Misawa, Cope with Midair Flip. 1986 Chavo Guerrero, Moonsault Body Block. 1987 and 1988 Jushin Liger, Shooting Star Press. 1989 and 1990 Scott Steiner, Frankensteiner. 1991 Masao Orihara, Moonsault Off Top Rope to Floor. 1992 Tube Cold Scorpio, Scorpio Splash. 1993 Vader, Moonsault. 1994 Great Sasuke, Sasuke Special. 1995 Rey Mysterio Jr., Flip Dive into Frankensteiner on Floor. 1996 Ultimo Dragon, Running Liger Bomb. 1997 Diamond Dallas Page, Diamond Cutter. 1998 Kenta Kobashi, Burning Hammer. Most disgusting promotional tactic. WWF continuing pay-per-view after Owen Hart's death, 134 votes WWF Big Show's father cancer angle, 98 votes WCW exploiting Jim Ross Bell's palsy, 61 votes WCW borderline racism, 20 votes WWF exploiting Jim Ross Bell's palsy, 19 votes WWF hiding Austin's injury before Survivor Series, 17 votes FMW fart explosion angle, 15 votes WWF using funeral footage of Hart on Raw, 14 votes WCW David Flair push, 12 votes WWF McMahon publicly engaging Hart's after death, 10 votes honorable mentions. WWF exploitation of women, 9 votes WCW using Bret Hart's first interview as ratings ploy, 8 votes previous winners. 1981, LaBelle Promotions The Monster Built in a Laboratory. 1982, Bob Backlund as WWF Champion. 1983 WWF pretending Eddie Gilbert re-broke his neck. 1984 Blackjack Mulligan faking heart attack. 1985 Mike Von Erich's illness used to sell Cotton Bowl tickets. 1986 Chris Adams' blindness compared to Gino Hernandez's death. 1987 to 1988 World-class exploiting Von Erich's tragedies. 1989 Jose Gonzalez babyface push by WWC. 1990 Atsushi Onita stabbing angle. 1991 WWF exploiting Persian Gulf War for WrestleMania angle. 1992 Eric Watts push. 1993 Cactus Jack amnesia angle. 1994 WCW retiring Ric Flair. 1995 WCW Gene Okerlund 900 line come-ons. 1996 WWF using fake Razor Ramon and Diesel. 1997 WWF Melanie Pillman interview. 1998 WCW exploiting Scott Hall's drinking problems. Reader's personal favorite wrestler. Chris Jericho, 140 votes. Mick Foley, 64 votes. Mitsuharu Misawa, 51 votes. The Rock, 37 votes. Chris Benoit, 34 votes. Ric Flair, 23 votes. The Sandman, 18 votes. Jeff Hardy, 17 votes. Minoru Tanaka, 16 votes. Bret Hart, 14 votes. Honorable mentions. Keiji Muto, 13 votes. Yoshihiro Tajiri, 10 votes. Shinjiro Otani, 9 votes. Previous winners. 1984 to 1993, Ric Flair. 1994, Sabu. 1995, Manami Toyota. 1996, Ric Flair. 1997, Chris Benoit. 1998, Mick Foley. Reader's least favorite wrestler. Hulk Hogan, 112 votes. Kevin Nash, 98 votes. Big Show, 39 votes. Sid Vicious, 32 votes. The Rock, 31 votes. Evan Karagias, 19 votes. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, 16 votes. Buff Bagwell, 12 votes. Big Boss Man and Randy Savage, 11 votes each. Honorable mentions. Rick Steiner, 10 votes. Bubba Ray Dudley, 9 votes. Previous winners. 1984 to 1985, Hulk Hogan. 1986 to 1988, Dusty Rhodes. 1989 to 1991, Ultimate Warrior. 1992, Eric Watts. 1993, Sid Vicious. 1994 to 1998, Hulk Hogan. Worst Wrestler. Kevin Nash, 82 votes. Viscera, 62 votes. Hulk Hogan, 52 votes. Sid Vicious, 41 votes. Jim Duggan, 28 votes. Stevie Ray, 18 votes. Rick Steiner and Evan Karagias, 15 votes each. Iron Sheik, 14 votes. Randy Savage, 10 votes. Previous winners. 1984, Ivan Putski. 1985, Uncle Elmer. Stan Frazier. 1986, Mike Von Erich. 1987, Junkyard Dog. 1988 to 1990, Ultimate Warrior. 1991 to 1992, Andre the Giant. 1993 to 1994, The Equalizer. Dave Sullivan. 1995, Renegade. 1996, Loch Ness. 1997, Hulk Hogan. 1998, Warrior. Worst Tag Team. Mideon and Viscera, 198 votes. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, 62 votes. New Age Outlaws, 23 votes. Mean Street Posse, 22 votes. The Dudleys, 21 votes. Bushwhackers, 19 votes. Public Enemy, 18 votes. Barry and Kendall Windham, 16 votes. Creative Control, 15 votes. Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young, 13 votes. Honorable mentions. Randy Savage and Sid Vicious, 10 votes. Previous winners. 1984, The Crusher and Baron Von Raschke. 1985, Uncle Elmer and Cousin Jr. 1986, Junkyard Dog and George Steele. 1987, Jimmy Valiant and Bugsy McGraw. 1988, Nikolai Volkov and Boris Yukov. 1989, Warlord and Barbarian. 1990 to 1991, Giant Baba and Andre the Giant. 1992 and 1994, Bushwhackers. 1993, Colossal Kongs. 1995, Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck. 1996 and 1997, Godwins. 1998, Kurgan and Golga. Worst Television Show. WCW Thunder, 172 votes. WCW Nitro, 155 votes. WWF Raw is War, 49 votes. WCW Saturday Night, 43 votes. WCW Worldwide, 32 votes. AAA Lucha Lunas, 17 votes. WWF Live Wire, 11 votes. Kick-Ass Wrestling, 10 votes. ECW on TNN, 4 votes. WWF Superstars, 3 votes. Previous winners. 1984, WWF All-Star Wrestling. 1985, Championship Wrestling from Florida. 1986, California Championship Wrestling. 1987, World Class Championship Wrestling. 1988, AWA on ESPN. 1989, ICW Wrestling. 1990, AWA on ESPN. 1991, Herb Abrams UWF. 1992 and 1993, GWF on ESPN. 1994 to 1995, WCW Saturday Night. 1996, AWF Warriors of Wrestling. 1997 USWA 1998 WCW Nitro. Worst Manager. Sonny Ono, 96 first place votes, Jeff Jones, 67 votes. Jimmy Hart, 30 votes, Elizabeth, 28 votes, Oklahoma, 27 votes, Terry Runnels, 25 votes, Jason, 20 votes, Tammy Sitch, 16 votes, Bill Alfonso, 13 votes, Asia, Francine, and Sable, 12 votes each. Honorable mentions. Master P, 11 votes, Tori, 11 votes, Curtis Hughes, 10 votes, Deborah, 10 votes, Miss Kitty, 9 votes. Previous winners. 1984 to 1995, Mr. Fuji, dominating 12 consecutive years. 1996 to 1998, Sonny Ono. Worst match of the year. Al Snow vs. Big Boss Man, September 26, Charlotte. 135 first place votes. Sheik and Volkov vs. Bushwhackers, October 10. Bay St. Louis. 116 votes. Undertaker vs. Big Boss Man, March 28, Philadelphia. 54 votes. Survivor Series Women's Match, November 14, Detroit. 22 votes. Tori vs. Ivory, August 22, Minneapolis. 20 votes. Sable vs. Tori, March 28, Philadelphia. 17 votes. Great Muta vs. Great Nita, August 28, Tokyo. 16 votes. Ivory vs. Fabulous Moolah, October 17, Cleveland. 15 votes. David Flair vs. Kimberly, November 21, Toronto. 14 votes. Mankind vs. The Rock, January 24, Anaheim. 12 votes. Honorable mention. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall vs. Strippers, October 25, Phoenix, 10 points. Previous winners. 1984, Fabulous Moolah vs. Wendy Richter, July 23, New York. 1985, Fred Blassie vs. Lou Albano, New York. 1986, Roddy Piper vs. Mr. T, April 2, New York. 1987, Hulk Hogan vs. Andre the Giant, March 29, Pontiac. 1988, Hiroshi Wajima vs. Tom McGee, April 21, Kawasaki. 1989, Andre the Giant vs. Ultimate Warrior, October 31, Topeka. 1990, Sid Vicious vs. Night Stalker, Brian Clark, November 20, Jacksonville. 1991, PN News and Bobby Eaton vs. Terry Taylor and Steve Austin, July 14, Baltimore. 1992, Rick Rude vs. Masahiro Chono, October 25, Philadelphia. 1993, Four Doinks, Bushwhackers and Men on a Mission, vs. Bam Bam Bigelow and Head Shrinkers and Bastion Booger, November 24, Boston. 1994, Jerry Lawler and Queasy and Cheesy and Sleazy vs. Doink the Clown and Dink and Wing and Pink, November 23, San Antonio. 1995, Sting vs. Tony Palmore, January 4, Tokyo. 1996, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage vs. Ric Flair and Arn Anderson and Mangan Barbarian and Kevin Sullivan and Z Gangsta, Tiny Lister and Ultimate Solution, Jeep Swenson, and Lex Luger, March 24, Tupelo. 1997, Hulk Hogan vs. Roddy Piper, October 26, Las Vegas. 1998, Hulk Hogan vs. Warrior, October 24, Las Vegas. Worst Feud of the Year. Big Show vs. Big Boss Man, 95 first place votes. Al Snow vs. Big Boss Man, 52 votes. Randy Savage vs. Kevin Nash, 36 votes. Rednecks vs. No Limit Soldiers, 34 votes. Hulk Hogan vs. Kevin Nash, 27 votes. Baldies vs. Rotten and Mahoney and New Jack, 19 votes. Nitro Girls Feuds, 14 votes. Undertaker vs. Vince McMahon, 13 votes. Kane vs. Big Show, 12 votes. Fabulous Moolah vs. Mae Young, 10 votes. Honorable mention. Ivory vs. Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young, 9 votes. Previous winners. 1984, Andre the Giant vs. John Studd. 1985, Sergeant Slaughter vs. Boris Yukov. 1986, Machines vs. John Studd and King Kong Bundy. 1987, George Steele vs. Danny Davis. 1988, Midnight Rider, Dusty Rhodes vs. Tully Blanchard. 1989, Andre the Giant vs. Ultimate Warrior. 1990, Ric Flair vs. Junkyard Dog. 1991, Hulk Hogan vs. Sergeant Slaughter. 1992, Ultimate Warrior vs. Papa Shango. 1993, Undertaker vs. Giant Gonzalez. 1994, Jerry Lawler vs. Doink the Clown. 1995, Hulk Hogan vs. Dungeon of Doom. 1996, Big Bubba vs. John Tena. 1997, DOA vs. Los Boricuas vs. Nation of Domination. 1998, Hulk Hogan vs. Warrior. Worst on interviews. Sid Vicious, 75 votes. Chyna, 40 votes. Kevin Nash, 36 votes. Medusa and Randy Savage, 26 votes each. Big Show, 22 votes. Stephanie McMahon, 21 votes. Steve Blackman, 17 votes. Hulk Hogan and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, 13 votes each. Honorable mention. Rick Steiner and Sable, 12 votes each. David Flair, 11 votes. Terry Runnels, 10 votes. Vince McMahon, 9 votes. Previous winners. 1984, Jimmy Snuka. 1985, Thunderbolt Patterson. 1986, Mike Von Erich. 1987, Bugsy McGraw. 1988 to 1992, Ultimate Warrior. 1993, Mr. Fuji. 1994, Dave Sullivan. 1995, Hulk Hogan. 1996 to 1997, Ahmed Johnson. 1998, Warrior. Worst promotion. World Championship Wrestling, 376 votes. World Wrestling Federation, 34 votes. FMW, 19 votes. Power Pro Wrestling, 17 votes. NWO Worldwide, 13 votes. Incredibly Strange Wrestling, 12 votes. Extreme Championship Wrestling and IWA Japan, 10 votes each. AAA, 9 votes. Pancrase, 8 votes. Previous winners. 1986, AWA 1987 to 1990, AWA 1991, Herb Abrams UWF 1992, GWF. 1993 to 1995, WCW. 1996, AWF 1997, USWA 1998, WCW. Best Booker. Vince McMahon 291 votes. Paul Heyman 113 votes. Ricky Choshu 39 votes. Vince Russo 38 votes. Chigusa Nagayo 37 votes. Keiichi Yamada 19 votes. Mitsuharu Misawa 10 votes. Antonio Peña 9 votes. Previous winners. 1986, Dusty Rhodes. 1987, Vince McMahon. 1988, Eddie Gilbert. 1989 to 1991, Shohei Baba. 1992, Ricky Choshu. 1993, Jim Cornette. 1994 to 1996, Paul Heyman. 1997, Paul Heyman. 1998, Vince McMahon. Shoot Fighter of the Year. Frank Shamrock, 272 first place votes. Kazushi Sakuraba, 110 votes. Tito Ortiz, 19 votes. Valit Ismail, 18 votes. Boss Rutan, 14 votes. Semi Schilt, 8 votes. Gilbert Evell, 6 votes. Previous winners. 1997, Maurice Smith. 1998, Frank Shamrock. Shoot Match of the Year. Frank Shamrock vs. Tito Ortiz, September 24th, Lake Charles. 241 votes. Kazushi Sakuraba vs. Royler Gracie, November 21st, Tokyo. 40 votes. Gilbert Evell vs. Tsuyoshi Kosaka, April 23rd, Osaka. 19 votes. Hoist Gracie vs. Valit Ismail, December 17th, 1998, Rio. 18 votes. Boss Rutan vs. Tsuyoshi Kosaka, January 8th, New Orleans. 14 votes. Frank Shamrock vs. Kiyoshi Tamura, April 23rd, Osaka. 13 votes. Previous winners. 1997, Maurice Smith vs. Mark Coleman, July 27th, Birmingham. 1998, Jerry Bullender vs. Kevin Jackson, March 13th, New Orleans. Best Gimmick. The Rock, 121 votes. Y2J, Chris Jericho, 55 votes. Magnum Tokyo, 37 votes. Stone Cold Steve Austin, 31 votes. The Godfather, 28 votes. Rock and Sock Connection, 27 votes. Crazy Max, 19 votes. The Sandman, 18 votes. Mankind, 15 votes. Too Cool, 14 votes. Honorable mentions. Big Shot Bob Holly, 15 votes. Norman Smiley, Vince McMahon, Masahiro Chono, 10 votes each. Raven, 9 votes. Previous winners. 1986, Adrian Street. 1987, Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man. 1988, Rick Steiner, Varsity Club. 1989, Jushin Liger. 1990 to 1994, The Undertaker. 1995, Disco Inferno. 1996, NWO. 1997 to 1998, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Worst Gimmick. Powers That Be, 41 votes. Beaver Cleavage, 34 votes. Oklahoma, 33 votes. Midian, 31 votes. Ernest Miller, 26 votes. The Godfather, 24 votes. David Flair, 22 votes. Ric Flair as a mental patient, 18 votes. Kiss Demon, 16 votes. No Limit Soldiers, 14 votes. Honorable mentions. Mean Street Posse, Creative Control, 13 votes each. Hulk Hogan, Buzzkill, 12 votes each. Blue Dust, Viscera, 10 votes each. Tony Marinara, 9 votes. Previous winners: 1986 to 1987, Adorable Adrian Adonis. 1988, Midnight Rider, Dusty Rhodes. 1989, Ding Dongs. 1990, Gobbledygooker. 1991, Oz. 1992, Papa Shango. 1993, Shockmaster. 1994, Dave Sullivan. 1995, Goldust. 1996, New Razor, Diesel, and Double J. 1997, New Goldust. Most embarrassing wrestler: Hulk Hogan, 71 votes, David Flair, 43 votes, Mae Young, 37 votes, The Godfather, 31 votes, Kevin Nash, 22 votes, Roddy Piper, 19 votes, The Rock and Big Boss Man, 18 votes each. Chocoball Mukai and Randy Savage, 17 votes each. Honorable mentions: Koto Fuyuki, Buff Bagwell, 16 votes each. Big Show, Viscera, 15 votes each. Fabulous Moolah, Tony Marinara, Nicole Bass, 10 votes each. Previous winners: 1986, Adrian Adonis. 1987 to 1988, George Steele. 1989, Andre the Giant. 1990, Dusty Rhodes. 1991, Ben Hammer. 1992, Papa Shango. 1993, Bastion Booger. 1994, Doink the Clown. 1995 to 1996, Hulk Hogan. 1997, New Goldust. 1998, Warrior. The first pay-per-view of the new year was unlike most of the PPVs at the end of this past year, which was good news. Quick results from the ECW Guilty as Charged show on January 9th at the Boutwell Auditorium in Birmingham, Alabama. 1. C.W. Anderson pinned Mikey Whipwreck, John Watson, in 4:41. Both Louis Dangerously and Bill Wiles interfered regularly. The finish saw Dangerously hit Whipwreck with a cell phone and Anderson delivered a spinebuster. 1.25 stars. 2. The match started as Simon Diamond, Pat Kenny, and Danny During, Dan Morrison, and Roadkill, Mike DiPaolo versus Jazz, Carlene Moore, and Nova, Mike Bucci, and Kid Cash, David Cash, but ended somehow as a tag with During and Roadkill beating Nova and Chris Chetty in 9:58. Cash was wrestling with a badly swollen jaw. At some point, without much of an explanation, Diamond, the ring announcer, who came out as Diamond's second, Big Dick Hertz, who returned about 2 minutes into the match, Jazz and Cash all disappeared. Chetty and During's valet Elektra got involved. Chetty power-slammed Elektra and pretended to lick her somewhere. During gave Chetty a double-arm DDT and Roadkill splashed him off the top for the pin. In between, Nova fell off the middle rope taking a bump backwards to the floor. This was nowhere close to as good as the matches During and Roadkill had with Nova and Cash on TV. The Dupes ran in and laid out Roadkill and Chetty afterwards. 3/4 1 stars. 3. Yoshihiro Tajiri and Super Crazy Francisco Pantoja Islas beat Jerry Lynn and Little Guido James Maritato in 12:37. Some real good wrestling here. Actually, the match was hurt by a meaningless double turn, where first Guido turned on Lynn and then Tajiri turned on Crazy, and it ended up with Tajiri pinning Lynn after a brainbuster. 3.25 stars. After the match, Steve Corino, Jack Victory, and Tommy Rich came out. Corino ran down Dusty Rhodes, who ran in and gave everyone elbows. When he dropped the elbow, Joey Styles called it the most electrifying move in sports entertainment. How original. Rhino ran in and laid out Rhodes, and they all beat on him until just about the entire undercard, both faces and heels, made the save under the guise that Rhodes was a legend, and Rhino made ECW look bad by not treating a legend with more respect. Rhino's match with Sandman was cancelled because Sandman missed the show due to a family emergency. The plan right now is for Rhodes, who also worked the TNN tapings in Atlanta 2 days earlier and ended up being laid out by Eric Watts, to work Philadelphia on January 15th and some of the upcoming Florida dates. 4. Angel Medina pinned New Jack, Jerome Young, in 8:48. This was exactly what every New Jack match is. A lot of bad-looking brawling but a lot of debris, loud music, little selling, and a balcony dive through a table. Vicky Grimes and Tony DeVito were interfering a lot. Grimes took the balcony dive and was also suplexed nearly on his head on the floor. Jack stapled DeVito, but Angel then hit Jack with a shovel, not very hard, but I guess it's better off he didn't, and pinned him. 1¼ stars. 5. Rob Van Dam, Robert Tchaikovsky, pinned Sabu, Terry Brunk, in 1440 to retain the TV title. Sabu said he would leave ECW if he didn't win. Tons of very dangerous and often sloppy moves. Van Dam's wife Sonia, who was badly injured over the summer in a jet ski accident, was at ringside at her first live show, and they showed her on camera constantly. You can't fault the effort, but it was still like every Sabu vs. Van Dam pay-per-view match where the crowd ends up being dead from the abundance of moves and lack of psychology, and it gets worse the longer it gets. Sabu is clearly beaten up badly as he was moving slowly on every spot. They portrayed Bill Alfonso as being two-faced by trying to play both sides. Finally he held a chair and wouldn't give it to either man, so Van Dam kicked the chair in his face with a Van Daminator. Sabu went for a triple jump moonsault, but Van Dam protected himself with a chair which Sabu landed on. Van Dam hit the frog splash for the win. 2½ stars. 6. Just incredible, Peter Polacco and Lance Storm Lance Evers won the ECW tag titles from Raven Scott Levy and Tommy Dreamer Tom Laughlin in 1038. Good match, and particularly the performance of Credible and Storm. Raven and Dreamer threw both men all the stage through tables. Dreamer juiced. They had a great spot set up where Dreamer literally crawled on the ropes. You had to see it to make the hot tag, except he didn't make the tag. Raven pretended he'd tagged and both guys bumped like crazy for him. Raven kicked out of Credible's tombstone the first time. Dreamer kicked out of Storm's piledriver. Storm went over the top through a table. Credible hit Dreamer with a chair. Francine gave Credible a low blow to set up the cat fight spot. Finish saw Credible go to hit Francine with the cane, but Raven shoved her out of the way and put himself into the path of the cane and was then pinned with the tombstone. 3 stars. 7. Mike Alfonso retained the ECW heavyweight title, pinning Spike Dudley, Matt Hyson, in 1422. Dudley took a fantastic beating. He got thrown over the top rope through a table. Then he got thrown over the top through 2 tables piled on each other. Dudley went for a tope, but caught his leg on the ropes and was falling straight down, but Awesome luckily caught him and was able to break most of his fall. Awesome juiced apparently as an accident. Dudley juiced, which was no accident. Dudley gave him an acid drop off the apron through a table and came off the top rope to the floor with a chair to the head. He went for an acid drop in the ring, but Awesome blocked it and threw Dudley over the top rope through yet another table. Awesome blocked a second acid drop and delivered a great-looking clothesline. Finish was one of the highlight tape. Awesome was on the middle rope holding Dudley with one arm on his shoulder. He then climbed up to the top rope, held Dudley high overhead and power bombed him through table number 6 with a pin. 3½ stars. This is a transcript of the unedited Bret Hart column for this past weekend in the Calgary Sun, which is the column we alluded to when mentioning that he hadn't written anything in a few weeks. It's probably the best column he ever wrote, clearly thought-provoking by someone very troubled by a changing world in business and being part of a family literally divided at the core, with everyone taking sides and the parents being caught in the middle after the death of a sibling. Some of this was because of his own reaction to the angle in Salisbury, Maryland on December 21st, where Goldberg was chasing him and he was to jump in his car and speed off. He never gave doing the angle a second thought, even though as it turned out he had just suffered a concussion 2 days earlier. The problem was ice had covered the driveway and he momentarily lost control of the car and nearly hit the production truck. Not much was said about it at the time due to the bigger story, because literally 2 minutes later, Goldberg's career appeared to be in jeopardy with all the blood flowing out of his arm on another stunt that went awry. And we don't have to say what the term stunt went awry brings to memory today in wrestling, let alone for Hart. A couple of weeks ago, I ended my column by saying that I'd have some explaining to do. I haven't written since then because I have a lot on my mind and I wasn't sure how to say it. Even if it doesn't come out exactly right, I think this is going to turn out to be an important column and I didn't want it to get lost in the holiday shuffle. The holidays. I hardly even remember Christmas and New Year's because of the colossal pulverizing I've been through since the last time I wrote. The Starrcade match with Goldberg was extremely punishing, really. For days I pulled myself up feeling like I've been beat around like a Samsonite suitcase. My match with Chris Benoit was very physical, and then I found myself in there with Jerry Flynn, a world-class kickboxer turned wrestler who I'm amazed didn't break his own feet with how hard he was kicking me in the ribs. This past Tuesday, I ended up in a hardcore match with Terry Funk and woke up with a big goose egg on my head from when he dumped me out of a trash bin. Hitman Hardcore. In a trash bin? Ah yes, the times they are a-changing, and don't blame me. I signed an autograph for a guy who asked me the ever-present "is it fake?" question, and I was stunned to realize that I'm not even sure I know the answer anymore. Is what fake? The lump on my head is sure real enough. I've been doing everything I can to help WCW compete in the ratings war with the WWF, and lately sometimes I find myself going against my own personal beliefs in order to be a team player. I ask myself, how far do I compromise in order to help WCW beat Vince McMahon, or do I find a personal victory in not bending at all? I'm having a harder time than people think finding that answer. What I do know is that in an effort to come up with their own version of the WWF's winning formula, WCW hired the WWF scriptwriters right out from under them. The phrase scriptwriter had no meaning in wrestling until very recently. People have always asked if wrestling is scripted, and the honest answer to that was no. I never saw or even heard of a script for a wrestling match. But now the first thing they do when you arrive at an arena is put a script in your hand. It's not a script that tells you how to wrestle, although I fear that's not far off. It's a script for all the soap opera stuff, which has taken precedence over the wrestling matches. I find myself memorizing lines and rehearsing scenes. I want to make it very clear to anyone who might still be wondering, and I know there are a few of you, that I never really tried to kill Sid Vicious by running him over with a monster truck. That's fake. But I could have killed myself screeching out of an arena in a speeding car in another scripted scene. That's real. I'm flooring it, tearing out of backstage, with no time in the scene to even put on a seat belt, and it turns out an icy rain had coated the ramp. There I am, careening out of control toward a huge trailer truck filled with television equipment. In the last moment, I was somehow able to swerve to safety. About a week later, I was awakened in the middle of the night by the dawning realization that I had a concussion from when Goldberg kicked me in the head, for real, and I'd been walking around in a haze ever since. Otherwise, there is no way I would have agreed to race a car up a narrow ramp flanked not only by expensive equipment but, by the way, what about whatever people happened to be around? Then look at Goldberg, who was scripted to punch through a glass car window, ending up nearly cutting his forearm off, and now he'll be out of action for quite a while. It's actually sickening to me because in wrestling's proper context, it would never have happened. I'm a wrestler, not a stuntman. And even a stuntman has time to strap himself in. I'm a professional wrestler and I get paid to wrestle in a ring. What am I doing fighting in the back, taking falls on concrete and doing stunts in speeding cars? And the really scary part was when I realized that I'd done exactly what Owen had done. I made a mistake, and before I knew it had done something really stupid, and for what? I was hurt, weary, and all I wanted to do was go home for the holidays, so I didn't even see it coming. I made it clear to WCW I will never make that mistake again. Since pro wrestling has turned into soap opera, there are very few skilled wrestlers anymore like Chris Benoit. He showed up barely in time to make it as part of a lost era, like the ghost of what wrestling used to be and was meant to be. Benoit made an indelible statement with me in Kansas City, one that is best defined not with words but by watching. It is asking an awful lot of Chris Benoit to carry that legacy into the future when wrestling shows today don't pay homage to the past. I tried to do what I could to clean up wrestling and bring it back to what it's supposed to be, and things are so far gone now that maybe Chris shouldn't try to be the morality police of wrestling any more than I could. Since wrestling is scripted now, I don't take it as seriously as I used to. I take my matches seriously and I take wrestling seriously, but all this soap opera stuff is just a job. I hope no one actually believes for 1 second that I'd really beat up Arn Anderson with a baseball bat, or some poor EMT for that matter. Yet I still get letters from people who call me a fallen hero. They just don't get it that there's no room for heroes in wrestling anymore. I got a letter a few days ago from a woman who was upset with me because she brought her 8-year-old son to the matches and didn't like what she saw. I'm upset with her for bringing a kid to the matches in the first place. Where has she been? My kids won't watch wrestling. They don't want to. And if they did want to, as a parent, I wouldn't let them. I've said before and I'll say it again. Wrestling is not for kids anymore. The other day in Roanoke, a mob of about 30 kids showed up in the hotel lobby clamoring for autographs, all so happy to be there. It made me realize how much I miss seeing kids at the matches. As happy as I was to see them, I was disturbed with the idea that someone might actually be taking them to the show. There used to be hundreds of kids that came out to the hotels every day in all the towns, and thousands of kids came out to the Calgary airport when I brought the world title home to Canada for the 5th time. You don't see that anymore, and that was only 3 years ago. Feels like a time gone by. I still take being a positive role model for kids very seriously, and I even enjoy the responsibility that goes along with it, but now I'm finding other ways to do it outside of wrestling. A couple of months ago at the Special Olympics, a high-ranking official confided in me that they're considering not inviting the WWF back anymore because of the crude content of the shows. I hope the charities I donate my time to won't think any less of my association with them on account of something that I have no control over. I think about what my place in wrestling is now. After all, I am the world champion. And I look at a match like the one with Goldberg at Starrcade and think, what a hard-fought classic battle. A serious struggle between two professionals fighting for a coveted world championship, something longtime wrestling fans can sink their teeth into and think there's still hope in them. Then came the ending. Something I have no control over. And it plummets. The ending was even more disappointing to me doing it than it was for people watching it. Then, I finished Mick Foley's book. I was looking forward to reading about the good old days. As much as I love the book, and Mick is a great guy and he's a great storyteller, some of the stories in his book are absolutely hilarious. But in my opinion, even Mick missed the point. Great wrestling is not about how many bones you break or how many teeth you lose or being set on fire or walking back to the dressing room with tacks in your back. That's what he did and he's proud of it and he's happy with it and I'm happy for him. But that's not what most wrestlers do. That's not what I do. Mick Foley knows as well as I do that the artistry of wrestling is supposed to be scripted realism. In his book, the point was lost. No sooner did I close the book than I turned on Stampede Wrestling. What I saw made me embarrassed for my family name. I was disappointed to see that my sisters, Diana and Ellie, would participate in such a farcical performance. When did they become wrestlers? To me, it was pathetic to see 14-year-old kids in the ring. When did they become wrestlers? For kids, they were great, but they're not seasoned professionals. Wrestling is an adult profession often intended for the amusement of children. Here I've been saying that wrestling isn't for kids anymore, that there are adult things happening in the ring that aren't for kids to watch anymore, and meanwhile, my own family has kids in the ring mimicking the adults. So what's the point of all this? I'm not sure I know. I just know I've emptied my head and my heart and this is as real as it gets. Maybe the whole wrestling business is pathetic, including me. The final figures for January 3rd as the first show under the new circumstances saw Raw do a 6.43 rating, 6.05 first hour, 6.78 seconds hour, and a 9.8 share to Nitro's 3.29 rating, 3.78 first hour, 2.84 seconds hour, and a 4.7 share. Probably because the NFL game on Monday drew the lowest rating in the 30-plus year history of MNF, a 10.04 rating and 17.3 share. Since it was a meaningless game with non-marquee teams, for the combined hour, the total wrestling audience was up to 10.3 million viewers. WCW also from 5 and 8 p.m. ran a replay of its Best of Nitro special from the previous Thursday, which has to be a huge disappointment drawing an ECW level rating of 0.98 with a 1.7 share, which is significantly lower than ER usually draws as a wrestling lead-in. What was amazing was that from a statistical standpoint, virtually nobody watching Nitro switched to Raw when it was over. The Triple H title win over show drew a 6.71 final head-to-head quarter, which grew to 6.86 for the first quarter of the second hour, 6 minutes opposed, 9 minutes unopposed. However, the first completely unopposed quarter with Acolytes vs. Posse did a 6.21, which is totally illogical being unopposed even with the weaker matchup on paper. There was a huge audience peak with a 7.61 unopposed rating for the last 6 minutes of the Rock vs. DX handicap match. All Japan. The first ever singles match with Mitsuharu Misawa vs. Ase Hiroshi took place that same night in Fukuoka before a sellout of 3,800 at the Kakusai Center, with Misawa winning with an elbow smash in 24:42 for a match which aired on television later that evening. It was said to be very different from a typical Misawa match and was described as more like a New Japan-style match, largely built around Hase continually going for armbar submissions. They also had 2 other major singles matches on the show, with Kenta Kobashi pinning Takao Omori in 1831 with a lariat and Jun Akiyama pinning Yoshihiro Takayama in 1039. There was also something weird in a match with Vader and Johnny Smith versus Steve Williams and George Hines, since it ended in a no contest and All Japan only does clean finishes. So they either did a work shoot angle, or something went awry. New Japan got huge news when the January 4th TV rating came in at a 7.7, well up from the 6.4 last year, which is huge for a show that aired from 12:20 to 2:20 a.m. on a Tuesday night. The highest quarter hour was an amazing 11.0 for the first quarter hour, which was the Shinya Hashimoto and Takashi Iizuka versus Naoya Ogawa and Kazunari Murakami match. Inoki was on a national radio show on January 5 talking about that match and also said he talked with both Akira Maeda and Nobuhiko Takada along with Tatsumi Fujinami about putting together dream matches this year, and talked once again about wanting an Ogawa vs Takada match. There has been a ton of hype for the match for the past several months, which up until this point has never taken place because Takada has never agreed to do a job for Ogawa. Both Keiji Muto and Hashimoto are off the February tour. New Japan announced major show lineups and never addressed why they weren't on. Chono left on January 9 for Minneapolis for medical treatment for his neck problems. He'll stay in the US and go to the WCW pay-per-view on January 16 in Cincinnati and also the Nitro and Thunder in Columbus and Evansville. Kazuyuki Fujita, who had the match with Kimo at the Dome show, is also off the tour. Fujita, a powerhouse former national champion freestyle wrestler, will supposedly be doing shows for Rings and Pride as a New Japan rep to make a reputation there before bringing him back into pro wrestling with the idea if he can beat people legit, he can occupy the shooter spot and be a top draw as a tough guy like Hashimoto was in the 90s. He leaves this week for Seattle to train under Maurice Smith and Tsuyoshi Kosaka and will face Hansa Nyman, a former pro wrestler from Rings, in the first round of the January 30 Pride tournament at the Tokyo Dome. WCW as a company felt so bad after Bill Goldberg was injured and missed the Dome show that they told New Japan they don't want any money for sending Savage and also refused to accept any money for the plane tickets for Paul Orndorff and J.J. Dillon. MMA DSC announced its first round pairings for the January 30 Tokyo Dome tournament, and the big surprise was a matchup between Kazushi Sakuraba versus UFC heavyweight champion Kevin Randleman. Since UFC and Pride are rival organizations and UFC does sign its fighters to exclusive deals, one of the reasons last year that the Frank Shamrock versus Kiyoshi Tamura match kept getting moved back was because they were waiting for Shamrock's non-compete term with Semaphore Entertainment Group to end. Randleman has Sakuraba, who many consider the number one under 200-pound fighter in the world, by 20 pounds and is giving away a ton of power. The only thing we've heard is that Semaphore Entertainment Group is looking into this situation. Frank Shamrock beat Tito Ortiz under similar circumstances, but to do so required enough time for Ortiz to gas out, and Randleman, who is a far better wrestler than Ortiz, in some fights has shown a lot more stamina than most wrestlers. Matches announced were Hoist Gracie versus Nobuhiko Takada, Enson Inoue vs. Mark Kerr, Alexander Otska vs. Igor Vachenchin, Masaki Sadake vs. Mark Coleman, Sakuraba vs. Randleman, Hansa Nyman vs. Kazuyuki Fujita, Gary Goodridge vs. Tkadaji Zaue, and Akira Shoji vs. Ebenezer Fontes Braga. They will also have what are being called alternate matches, in which the winners would go to the March Tokyo Dome in the event of an injury to one of the winners above, with Carlos Barreto, Guy Mesger, Vanderlei Silva, and Osamu Tashiakari. Without matches announced, but given the size of the 4-1 would presume it'll be Barreto versus Tashiakari and Mesger versus Silva. DSE wants Ken Shamrock to be in Mesger's corner. The rules of the matches are 1 15 minutes round. If there is no clean winner, it goes to the judges. My belief is that the judges, unless somebody wins pretty clearly, will at first vote draws and send them into a 15 minutes overtime, at which point they'll go to the judges again, and this time they won't vote draws. In the criteria of how the matches are being judged, effective striking, takedowns, control and positioning on the ground, etc. is an interesting category. That points are also supposed to be given in a close fight to the lighter man in the fight, which is believed to be a concession to Gracie. This is probably the most interesting tournament in many years, if not ever. The winners will be re-bracketed for March, no doubt for maximum gate appeal as well as to keep Kerr, Randleman and Coleman away from each other since they are all friends, provided they are all in the running, so they don't have an actual bracket all the way through as most tournaments would. ECW. The Motorhead version of Enter the Sandman, which is the remake of the Metallica hit on the ECW Extreme Music CD, got a Grammy nomination for the Best Heavy Metal Performance. The other 4 nominees were Black Sabbath for a remake of Iron Man, another pro wrestling entrance theme, Black Blood by Ministry, Starfuckers Incorporated by 9 Inch Nails, and Super Beast by Rob Zombie. The TNN show, since there were no shows this past week, was largely built around a Dreamer vs. Credible ladder match. Show opened with a replay of the Awesome Tanaka finish from White Plains and a long history of the ECW title feature. The feature originally aired months back on syndication, and they added in the last 2 title changes. It's so funny to look back at tapes from even 4 years ago and see just how much everyone has physically changed. Wrestling is one grueling burnout business. Spike Dudley did his first interview, totally out of character, talking about winning the title. I think the interview did his character more harm than good. Awesome then did his first lengthy interview. Picture China on steroids. Okay, bad analogy. They showed the last 5 minutes of a three-way with the Dupes, Casanova and During and Roadkill. It was a good match largely due to During and even more due to Cash. They built to a cat fight with Elektra and Jazz. Simon Diamond carried Jazz off. Chris Chetty showed up and Elektra slapped him. So in response, he kissed her and she went unconscious and he carried her off, making sure to lift her dress so everyone could see her thong. During ended up pinning Cash after a leg drop off the top onto Cash's back. Dreamer vs. Credible was your basic if all else fails we'll do 100 groin shots match. They built it around the story of Dreamer wrestling in the building, Westchester County Center, that he saw his first match with his dad as a child in, and now he's a headliner but his dad, who has Alzheimer's, can't watch it live. Dreamer was teary-eyed at the beginning. Credible took a lot of good bumps to carry things since Dreamer is so limited by his injuries. It was all groin shots and ladder bumps. Dreamer climbed up and got the cane. Jason gave Dreamer the worst, enzui-jiri in a long time. Francine gave Jason, guess what? A low blow and a Bronco buster. Storm clotheslined Dreamer off the top. Raven made the save and gave Storm guess what? Another low blow. Then came the cat fight spot. When all was said and done, Credible hit Dreamer twice with a cane before delivering the tombstone for the pin in 13:26. WCW. Reports are that WCW as an entity lost $10 million during the year 1999, which would make it the most money any single wrestling company has ever lost in a one-year period in the history of the business. Imagine the magnitude of a statement like that. Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair had meetings with the higher-ups on January 6th and January 7th respectively. Hogan agreed to return on the February 14th Nitro at the Nassau Coliseum, which sold 3,000 tickets when they were put on sale on January 7th. You know Hogan is no dummy. That's the night where Raw starts at 11 p.m. because of the Westminster Dog Show, so it's guaranteed Nitro ratings will be up a half point or more, so his return is guaranteed to make a ratings impact. You can knock Hogan all you want, but he's one of the smartest guys in this industry. Nash missed the weekend house shows where he was scheduled to headline against Vicious, claiming a concussion suffered allegedly when he was hit by the rubber crowbar by Arn Anderson. Bagwell also missed the weekend shows claiming an injury but was healthy enough come Nitro. Bagwell has developed a bad rep trying to come up with excuses not to work house shows or do on sales or public appearances. Maintaining a physique like that for real requires a lot of time and planning besides what else it obviously requires, but he always seems to be fine when it comes time for TV exposure. Hart was called to replace Nash against Vicious. While Bill Bush had an initial honeymoon period, the same complaints about double standards, which pretty well always exist in any sports or entertainment company, are being voiced. Why stars get away with not going on the road while injured and mid-cards are told they need to appear when it's the stars no showing, and not the mid-carders, that are one of the reasons the company is in the condition it's in. It's been noted that if any mid-card wrestler did that verbal tirade Scott Steiner did on Nitro on January 3rd, they'd be yelled at and threatened, but nobody said anything to Steiner. Of course, nobody ever says anything to Steiner because even in his incapacitated condition, he's scary. Hall and Nash are attempting to get a release from their contract. Like everyone else, Nash wants to work a program with Rock, and sees Triple H as the top heel, and since Triple H and X-Pac were always his understudies, that it guarantees him a good spot. Hall went to the WWF show on January 4th in Orlando, Florida, but that is his hometown and he does know people there and has attended ECW when they came there as well. Funk is not scheduled to work house shows, only TVs and pay-per-views. While as a short-term desperation move being that Flair didn't do it and it was literally New Year's Eve and they needed someone to fill the role since Flair nixed it, Flair would have done it short-term if they released him after the short run to work in WWF. Funk was probably the best possible choice. The only other one that could have worked was Dusty Rhodes, and he couldn't have pulled off the wrestling end of it against people like Nash and Hart. Even though he's been gone so long, he'd have gotten a bigger pop than Funk initially. However, Funk over the long term would be far more valuable to the company in the role of being an interview coach. This isn't exactly the first time these words have been written. For people like Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Kidman, Juventud Guerrera, Lash LaRue, Rey Mysterio Jr. and other young wrestlers working hands-on with them rather than in an on-camera role. Funk was one of the few people who could have pulled it off with Flair not there and not been a major disappointment. Bischoff met with Brad Siegel on January 5th to talk about a number of subjects, the main one attempting to buy out the remainder of his contract. Whether that means a Fox wrestling project, which is said to be 2 years away from starting if it even happens, at this point is all speculative. Vince Russo called a meeting of everyone to try and air out any problems on January 3rd and tell people that if they had a problem doing anything, asked of them to come to them about it, probably stemming from Hart's reaction after being asked to run Sid's car over with the monster truck. The meeting seemed to go along fine for a while, although when Russo told the group he was giving the tag titles to David Flair and Crowbar because they had been working so hard and he wanted to reward good work, it didn't go over with anyone because of the feeling that having them as champs destroys whatever value the belts have. At one point in the meeting, Nash started complaining about the food and the fact they have to be in the building at 1 p.m. and can't tan and be in the gym, and the catering was so bad. He yelled at David Crockett, who was in charge of that. It wound up with Gary Juster arguing with Nash. It was brought up about bringing weights to the building so guys could work out, but Saturn complained they couldn't get the kind of workout they need because it wouldn't be well equipped enough. Because so many wrestlers have injuries to body parts, there are many movements they can't do so. Well-equipped gyms have machines that are easier on the joints where they can get at least some work out of the body part and that they couldn't using free weights alone. For whatever reason, the meeting started falling apart at that point. Juster talked to both wrestlers individually about it. Later they went to Russo and complained they shouldn't have been yelled at for the suggestion because it was supposed to be an open forum, and Russo pretty well agreed. Several former WWF wrestlers were approached about being brought for the angle with Jarrett. Snuka and Steele agreed reportedly for $2,000 to $3,000, while Tito Santana, King Kong Bundy, Honky Tonk Man and Bob Backlund turned it down. Nick Bockwinkel was also approached. At this point nobody from the company has talked with Bruno Sammartino, but there are still intermediaries talking with him, including about this angle to put Jarrett over, but Sammartino also wants to hear from Russo personally. The August pay-per-view show is in Salt Lake City, which does officially end the tradition of horrible August shows, maybe not the tradition of horrible shows, but at least horrible shows before non-wrestling crowds in Sturgis. The reason Scott Hudson hasn't been doing Nitro as originally planned is because due to his regular job he can only go on the road 1 day per week. The idea was that would be Monday, but after the first time 10A, Hudson and Shivani worked together on Thunder and it was so well received, the idea changed to not break up a good team. Asia isn't taken out of the Revolution because of heat with any of the members, but simply because of the plan to bring Tori Wilson or whomever in and the feeling that there was no point having 2 women in the group. The story to bring Wilson in goes back actually months, and supposedly they are going to show things from the past, such as in that elimination tag team match where she sold a low blow by Saturn when a woman shouldn't sell that move theoretically, to show in the interview it had been planned all along. The idea of Wilson being in the Revolution appears to be short-term, as there is a follow-up scenario of her leaving the Revolution to lead to Kidman breaking away from the Filthy Animals, which was an idea started with the feud with Guerrero, then dropped when Guerrero and Mysterio Jr. went down. Asia, being so new in the business, was really upset when she got the word she was being taken out of the group. Saturn is pretty banged up with a hip pointer and bruised hip from the superplex given to him by Asia on December 27th in their Nitro match, and is working every night on it but can't take any slams. They are about to shoot an angle to again injure Mysterio Jr., so he'll then be taken off television for a few months. As of the weekend, there were about 5,800 tickets sold for Sold Out in Cincinnati on January 16th. There is a positive sign since Tulsa on February 7th for Nitro sold out 6,000 seats the first day tickets were put on sale. Tulsa is one of WCW's best markets because it's Goldberg's hometown, but they specifically didn't advertise him for the show since he's not expected to be ready by then. WCW seems to be working a little with Harley Race's Missouri promotion, as they are sending Alan Funk and Chuck Palumbo there to work a number of shows later this month with Barbarian and Bobby Eaton. It appears the Power Plant Elite angle is going to end up involving the return of Paul Orndorff. Larry Zbyszko should be back in the ring as a wrestler very shortly. Kimberly is being kept off television in order to make the DDP Bagwell angle seem more legit. WCW sent a legal cease and desist letter to AWA Superstars of Wrestling for their hints of Lenny and Lodi, Len Carlson and Brad Kane, appearing at their February 29 TV taping in Laughlin, Nevada. Phil Mushnick in the January 9 New York Post wrote about the Braves and Turner Broadcasting having a double standard for ordering John Rocker to undergo psychological treatment for his racist and homophobic remarks, while at the same time the same overseeing organization used the characters of Lenny and Lodi on WCW television, noting Lenny and Lodi, performing on national TV in the roles of hate-inspiring homosexuals, were following the orders of WCW executives on Turner's payroll. He then asked, who profits from hateful, ethnocentric conduct, Rocker or Turner? The story didn't note that WCW months ago dropped the characters after complaints from GLAAD. It should be noted that Eric Bischoff for months before he left was begging for Nitro to be cut back to 2 hours. The reason he was given was because the cost of production for a 2-hour or a 3-hour show was basically identical and they had advertising sold for the rest of the year, so the move couldn't be made until January at the earliest. While Russo pushed for the cutback, the decision, ultimately, both to go to 3 hours and to later cut back to 2 came from Brad Siegel, as was the decision to go 8 and 10 p.m. rather than 9 and 11 p.m. as Russo, and for that matter Bischoff, would have wanted. The Thunder, taping on January 4th in Florence, South Carolina, drew 2,168 paid, plus 2,514 comps, for a $45,925 gate. January 6th in Roanoke, Virginia, drew 2,290 paying $49,865. In Lowell, the main event saw Hart replace Nash and lose via DQ in a title match to Sid. Sid was ready to deliver the power bomb when Jarrett interfered. Before the match they did some mic work, and gave the mic to a fan who screamed "Owen Hart sucks" into it. Earlier in the show they had 3-count do a performance and Sid came out and powerbombed Karagi's while the other two ran off. They did the old dusty finish in the tag title match when it appeared the Harris twins won the title from Crowbar and David Flair, only to have it reversed. In a last man standing match, Flynn beat Bigelow via count out. Also, for comedy's sake, in the program they had listed a match with Chavo and Asia versus Malenko and Saturn. Dave Penzer, in running down the lineup, talked about Chavo having a mystery partner. Chavo came out by himself and said that he had a mystery partner that would shock the revolution. Then Asia came down. Overall, a pretty bad show from most reports. The January 7th Baltimore Sun had an article on Sky of the Nitro Girls, who is now Miss Hancock on the Lenny and Lodi standards and practices skits. The article stated that being a cheerleader with WCW was the trashiest job for any woman on television except being part of the Jerry Springer Show. Miss Hancock's real name is Stacy Keebler. She's 20, has a 3.7 GPA, majoring in communications at Towson University, and won $10,000 in winning the Nitro Girls Search Contest. WWF. Steve Austin switched his surgery from January 11th in Cleveland to a new team of doctors in San Antonio headed by Dr. Lloyd Youngblood on January 17th. Dr. Henry Bowman, who was originally going to do the surgery and pioneer the procedure in 1972 and was considered the best man to do the job, said in an interview with Mike Samuda of WrestleLine.com that Austin has a very large spur and neck protrusion compressing his spinal cord, which puts him in significant jeopardy of a spinal cord injury if he continues to wrestle. He has an 8 mm room for his spinal cord where he should have 18 mm. SmackDown, taped January 4th in Orlando, Florida, turned out to be a more wrestling-oriented and less risque version of WWF than in a long time. There was a notable increase in the amount of clothing on the women, and far more time spent on matches in the ring, and the violence factor was way toned down. Overall the show was entertaining, but it also was not what brought them to the dance. X-Pac beat Big Show in 108 when Show choke slammed ref Mike Chioda. After the match X-Pac hit Show with a chair, who no-sold it and basically killed him. Hollies beat Chyna and Jericho in 224. Chyna and Jericho didn't want a team. Jericho was hilarious backstage before the match, basically saying he'd wrestle the match alone. Then when he wanted to tag, she refused. She clotheslined him and Bob pinned him with that slam that they haven't given a name to yet. I wonder if when Austin was starting to catch fire, if they had booked him losing to women and getting pinned by Jericho, if he'd have ever gotten as far as he did. Most of the show was built around a skit where a fake Mankind, Dennis Midian Knight, was running around Disney World in Orlando making fun of Mankind that since he retired nobody knew who he was and he was obnoxious in the park to everyone. Finally he made a remark about his wife Colette and the real Mankind showed up and smashed him into a garbage dispenser for making fun of his wife. Back to live action, a nearly fully clothed Tori asked Stephanie if she could go to the bathroom. You know what happened next. Road Dogg showed up looking for Triple H and Stephanie told him he was in the bathroom, so Dogg opened the door and saw Tori and she went into her post-rape syndrome manic attack. Handicap match saw Acolytes beat Billy Gunn in 203 when Dogg interfered for the save and they brawled. Kane now can talk, not well, but he asked for a match with that pervert Road Dogg. Dogg wasn't happy about having the match. Have you ever noticed? It doesn't matter which member of the family it is that those McMahons always outsmart all the mid-card wrestlers. I'd hate to read their contracts. Kane pinned Dogg with a choke slam and tombstone in 504. No heat for this match. Angle remained unbeaten, beating Rock via DQ in 347. Super heat not only for Rock's talking but for this short match. If they handle him right, Angle is going to be a superstar as a heel. A lot of the heat in this match wasn't simply because Rock was out there wrestling an opponent. Blackman came out but Rock got the stick from him and hit Angle, so he got DQ'd, and he used the Rock bottom on Blackman and People's elbow on Angle after. Edge and Christian and Jeff Hardy beat Dudley's and Al Snow in 3:02 when Edge pinned Devon after the downward spiral. Snow hit the Dudleys with head after the match for losing. Test pinned Bossman in 4:03 when Albert's high kick hit Bossman by accident. They've called that kick the bicycle kick, which is a soccer term for something that looks absolutely nothing like what it is, or a scissors kick, a martial arts term for something that looks remotely like what it is. This match was very good, which says something since Bossman's matches usually aren't, and Test is very hard-working, but nobody would call him a great worker yet. Taka Michinoku and Sho Funaki beat Mean Street Posse 2-on-3. They're doing a gimmick where Posse always loses as a way to get them over. They're also giving them moves and names for moves. Pete Gas does a forward choke slam called the Gas Mask, for instance, and Rodney does a buff blockbuster, not very good, called the High Society. Funaki pinned Rodney after Michinoku delivered a missile dropkick in 3:01. They had a long segment on the video screen with one of those team meetings and Triple H saying he was going to pick a name out of the cage set of balls for his opponent. The one notable thing about this was that the fans live hated this. They were booing it like crazy, as bad as the worst WCW skit. It wasn't that bad, but it was really interesting to see WWF fans want the action to stay on stage rather than backstage. First he picked out the name Andre the Giant, then Fabulous Moolah, who he refused to wrestle. Eventually Howard Finkel was asked to pick a name, but he tripped and knocked it over and all the balls fell on the floor. He grabbed one and it was Rikishi. Rikishi beat Triple H via DQ in 7:11. This must have been Rikishi's best match in 10 years and may have elevated him to near top headliner status. Fans were really into the near falls, like they actually believed the title could change hands. Big pop when Triple H kicked out of the Banzai. Big pop when Rikishi kicked out of a weak chair shot. Finally Triple H got DQ'd on purpose to keep the title, hitting him with his belt. After the match Rikishi and Too Cool all danced and the place went crazy. This match was a huge success for everyone involved. There was a huge bit of controversy stemming from a radio interview Dwayne Johnson did on the Opie and Anthony show in New York on January 6. It stemmed from Opie and Anthony bringing out a guest, named Sickboy, who was the webmaster of a site where another person writing under the fictitious name WDB wrote a parody Rock interview on the show, which included a fictitious response to a fictitious question about a bank, where the Rock in character said that since he's half black and half Samoan, claimed he didn't know whether he should rob the bank or eat it. Johnson was on the phone either with a publicist or someone from the WWF for 2 hours regarding the post before doing the show, and apparently didn't see the post itself but was furious about it after hearing it. After being on the show for 40 minutes plugging his book and the interview going fine, when Sickboy came out, Rock was furious, claiming that by putting him on, in some way Opie and Anthony were condoning the racist remark on the website, and stormed off the show. The audience was stunned with his reaction, and Sickboy, while Rock was telling him off, claimed not to have read the post. He was the webmaster of the site, but it is very logical he didn't read it, and that he'd fire the writer, and eventually the controversy seems to have closed the entire site down. On Friday all the writers on the site were told it was being shut down, but the site itself was still up later that day, and Opie and Anthony were left there embarrassed for what happened as well. Rock also claimed the site made racial remarks about Mark Henry and Jacqueline, which people on the site denied. The basic story from those on the site was that it wasn't meant as a racist remark, but that they have a politically incorrect site and wrestling is politically incorrect. Of course, people hiding behind the idea that it's cool to be politically incorrect can use that excuse to then justify almost anything. At the same time, there are far more racial portrayals of minorities on pro wrestling television shows, including at times on WWF television, than that tasteless parody, which is no defense of the racist remarks in the parody, and Dwayne Johnson in his book does indicate a hatred of racism. To the WWF's credit, Johnson is probably the first pro wrestling superstar of African American descent not marketed in the slightest as such. Unlike, for example, when Ron Simmons as Farouk or Tony Norris as Ahmed Johnson were chasing the WWF title, there was no storyline ever for Rock about being the dreaded first black champion when he was chasing, or any culmination of a dream when he won it the first time. Whether that was his insisting or the WWF's marketing, and I strongly presume it was the latter, as the idea from day one seemed to have been to not market him as black. Although his ancestry was never hidden, as from his debut they aired many clips of his father and grandfather. I don't know for sure. One can definitely understand Johnson being intolerant of racism growing up as a minority and having to fit in. As a wrestler, no matter how over he is, he simply can't control what goes on within the entire wrestling framework. But because he works in a business like pro wrestling, the fact we never heard of him storming off a set when WWF did stereotypical portrayals of blacks or any other minority group, which pro wrestling as an industry has been done for years under the guise of being after heat or being edgy, is why some people on the internet no doubt feel a somewhat racial joke is funny and cool and not really racial. Because on the subject they are parodying, the same remark would have been excused by everyone on the guise they were after heat, which is why the Braves' response to John Rocker is so funny considering some of the angles a wrestling company under the same umbrella has run even in the past several weeks. A lot more people see what is portrayed on television, and it is something everyone involved should at least think for a second about if they are to congratulate Rock for what he did and castigate the immaturity of the writer and the tone of the people on the site defending it, hiding behind terms like politically correct and defending themselves in posts filled with name-calling and swearing, just like their wrestling heroes would. Maybe someone should think for more than a second the next time they come up with a piñata on a pole match or use a tequila bottle finish, or portray a black pimp, a black sex addict whose feces smells unusually bad, or black stereotypical ghetto street gangsters. And if it should be excused because it's only wrestling and that's a premise I've never agreed with, then why shouldn't it be excused in people who grow up watching wrestling parodying it in the same fashion on the net? Bottom line, it was a line in very bad taste and everyone involved has seemingly apologized for it, although largely in very immature ways. If Dwayne Johnson was a baseball player, he wouldn't have overreacted, acting the way he did. As the human being Dwayne Johnson, he didn't overreact. As a guy who came on radio as The Rock, it's a lot less of a black and white issue. And for those who think all of life is a work, being that this came at the same time John Rocker was making sports headlines in New York and that the WWF's own Raw magazine this month for no apparent reason had a 2-page spread on Opie and Anthony, and the fact Rock spent the 40 minutes showing no signs of problems promoting his book before losing his cool, you have your evidence. But the way everyone ran for cover when it was over, I'd guess it wasn't. Mark Henry has a ligament tear in one of his elbows and is out of action, but won't be undergoing surgery. D'Lo Brown missed the house shows this weekend with a shoulder injury. Davey Boy Smith is scheduled back on January 17th. Brown also missed the midweek tour of Puerto Rico, as did Road Dogg due to having a problem with high blood pressure. The others who missed the Puerto Rican shows were Val Venus and Ricky Santana ended up winning the tournament to be crowned IWA Tag Team Champions, did so because after making the commitment to go because they were friends with Savio Vega, decided that since their schedule was so grueling, they needed the rest and basically blew it off. The Ken Shamrock story has gotten really strange. It was reported he had a knee operation, and when Bruce Pritchard called him to check on it, he told them that wasn't the case. After that, Shamrock was in Connecticut meeting with Vince McMahon and Jim Ross on December 30th regarding several issues and was walking fine, showing no signs of any surgery. We were also told there was no operation. Then this past week, when Barry Bloom, Shamrock's agent, was talking to WWF officials, he told them that Shamrock had just had his knee scoped over the past few days. The gist of the meeting seems to have been that Shamrock expressed an interest in taking time off to take an offer, apparently from Japan, and wanted the WWF to sponsor him, show his training on television while preparing for the match or matches before returning as a full-time wrestler in a year or less. The WWF was willing to allow him to leave and do the fights and leave the door open for a return, but not to keep him on salary while he trained, and the meeting ended with the idea that he would be taking a decision this week, which as of the last reports we've heard, is a decision he hasn't made. Terry Funk was technically still under contract to WWF. He had a deal that expired in December, but because he never formally quit, the contract automatically rolled over for another year. Because of Funk's status in the business, WWF isn't holding him to the deal and sent him forms for a release. Jim Ross said on Wrestling Observer Live that they are looking at putting Amy Dumas, Miss Congeniality in ECW, and Papi Chulo together, and they may be introduced in 4 to 6 weeks. Papi Chulo has been learning English and it helps as a duo because Dumas speaks fluent Spanish. Ross also said that everyone under a developmental deal would very shortly be wrestling in either Louisville, Memphis or Puerto Rico. He said Scott Vick, Sick Boy in WCW, would be brought in for an evaluation this coming week and there are plans to bring him in shortly, or if not, he may work for 2 months or so at one of the smaller offices to get him ready. Ross was particularly high on Steve Bradley and Barry Buchanan as far as developmental level wrestlers ready to be brought in. He also expected D'Lo Brown to sign a new contract. His current deal has a little more than 1 year left, within a few weeks, and said Taz's, apparently the spelling they are going to use since Time Warner owns the name Taz, debut isn't definite because they don't have a firm grasp on how they want to present his debut, and that the Royal Rumble may not be the opportune place to debut him. The problem with Taz in the Rumble is that Battle Royals, due to visualization, Fans are naturally drawn to the taller guys, and Taz would have a difficult time making a big impact unless he just throws a million people out. On the Billboard charts, which readjusted now that the Christmas season is over, the WWF CD fell to number 52 with 47,400 units sold, down from 110,000, and WCW fell to number 143 with 17,709 units sold, down from 38,000. Basically every CD on the chart fell drastically, but the decline of the two wrestling CDs was slightly greater than the market as a whole. Within the industry, the WCW CD, which actually as music has gotten far better reviews than the WWF one, is considered a major financial flop. On the Rec Sports Billboard chart for this week, WWF's top 3 videos heading the charts were Austin vs. McMahon, Rock Know Your Role, and Triple H and China, with NBA Live 2000 at number 4. WWF occupied spots number 6 through number 12, and ended up with 13 of the top 20 spots. The only WCW videos were Sting at number 18 and Nitro Girls at number 20. Now how that qualifies as a sports video is really beyond me. Dreamstage Entertainment sent WWF a proposal this week. The gist of it seems to be that they want to become almost a WWF Japan, including have WWF do regular tours and television tapings in Japan. WWF, with business going so good domestically, and with commitments to TV tapings every Monday and Tuesday, it would be hard to see how they could do something that extensive. Among those interviewed for the ABC 2020 piece on Mick Foley have included Vince McMahon, Rock, Jim Ross, his wife Colette, Barry Blaustein, who did the Beyond the Mat doc that Foley stars in, and myself. Chris Cuomo, son of Mario, did some of the interviews. Shawn Michaels and wife Rebecca Curci, former Nitro Girl Whisper, had their first child, a 7-pound, 3-ounce baby girl named Cameron Kate Hickenbottom, on January 6. SmackDown tapings on January 4 in Orlando, Florida drew a sellout 12,652, paying $336,525. Whether it's the clash of titans in the ring or the drama that unfolds outside it, we're here to break it down, match by match, feud by feud. Remember, in the world of wrestling, every day is a battle, and every victory is a story waiting to be told. Until next time, keep the passion alive, and never stop wrestling with the possibilities. This is the Pro Wrestle Machine,